Chapter 195, Vittoria Vici. The Dare Dragon Group now owns the biggest building in town. Just between the Jarl's Longhouse and the new market area, a 4-story building built with the urban techniques brought to this world by a certain otherworlder. This building was wide and big. It had a lot of offices which were mostly busy all day long. Most of the employees from the management and the financial departments were mostly stationed here in the first, second, and third floors. My office has completely taken over the 4th floor. It is not me being bossy or anything. I just decided that all the archives and the important files should be kept near to the secretary room, and also I wanted a meeting and a CEO office in the most modern way possible. It ended up looking really good, and I got praised a lot by Nurina, who filled for me the last 2 weeks. Now, in this 4th floor, a lot of people gathered up and were mostly glaring at each other. On the head of the table was the powerhouses of Winterhold, which are mostly the senior executives of my company. Jarl career was called over. On the right side, there was the Imperial Envoy, who is apparently called Viscount Lucius, accompanied by a Nord Legion officer referred to as Legate Thorvar, and the Imperial businesswoman Vittoria Vici. On the left side, there was the messenger from Windhelm, Captain Mislav Stonecrusher, accompanied by Ralof of Riverwood. At the end of the table was the firemen's, and on top of them there was Uncle Njord. Father and mother were not showing their faces and sat behind him. The overall atmosphere in the room was like a ticking bomb. The Imperial Envoy was glaring at the Stormcloak messenger. Vittoria Vici was glaring at me. Njord was glaring at Legate Thorvar. Ralof was glaring at Jellinar. Nefertiti was glaring at the food on the table. All in all, everyone was glaring at something for some reason. I tried to find something to glare at, but it seems that I had nothing left to glare at me back. Soon after, someone finally ended the glaring contest. I suppose you were John Dare. You made us wait for 3 days. 3 days in this godforsaken wasteland. It was the Imperial Envoy Viscount Lucius who spoke first. What a rude tone. Thane John Dare. It is an honor to finally meet you in person. The Stormcloak messenger Captain Mislav took a different approach. The honor is mine. As I replied, Captain Mislav grinned at Viscount Lucius. I understand that all the parties in this room insisted on having a meeting as soon as possible. So, what is the urgent matter? The urgent matter is about Winterhold. This place is slacking on taxes, refusing to provide recruits, hiding details from the periodic reports to Solitude, and as soon as I arrive here, we find that the whole hold is under monopoly by a single entity. Viscount Lucius started shouting around. This man, is he trying to provoke me? I could see the Imperial Legate beside him sighing while Vittoria Vici was nodding to his words. This group is not rhyming well. I see. These matters are mostly for the Jarl to take care of. Isn't that right, Jarl Career? It certainly is, Career replied. And also, if there are any complaints about the Dare Dragon Group, you can file it to the legal department of our company on the 2nd floor, office number 2, Mrs. Roz. The Imperial Envoy looked at me as if I said something strange. Legal department. What is that for? Vittoria Vici asked. It consists of highly educated employees known as lawyers. They have studied all the laws of the Empire and the Kingdom of Skyrim, and they make sure that all our actions are within the law. They also receive the complaints of any official envoy, and they hold a lot of authority to even put my actions within the company on hold. This is how awesome my small army of lawyers is. You think I would be reincarnated without spreading the holy occupation of lawyers? Law is mostly practiced by the high members of the community, and they are mostly the ones people refer to as nobles. In Cyrodiil, they are the regular noble from counts and viscounts through all the ranks, and in Skyrim, it is the Jarls and Thanes as well as the other official titles. To have a legal department like mine is a bit unthinkable. How can normal people practice law that is mostly monopolized and abused by high-ranking members of society? Maybe nobles in this world are actually nobles and treat the people fairly, unlike how it used to appear in the works of fiction I read in my past life, but people always find ways to degrade others. And now, as I gave some commoners the power of knowledge about law, I can be seen as someone who cheated and cheated very badly. They should have realized by now that I can't be cornered when it comes to the validity of my actions. Everything is crystal clear by law. The Imperial envoys backed down a bit to think of a comeback, while the Stormcloaks decided to play this time. By the way, Thane John, I noticed a new temple being built in town. Will there be a shrine for Talos? Ralof asked. This was a direct question. Even the Imperials looked at me waiting for an answer. Sadly, no. It pains me, but the worship of Talos was outlawed by the Empire. My answer made the Imperials look at me as if I said something strange. It seemed that they were expecting otherwise. The Stormcloaks, however, seemed to be provoked. Outlawed? Are you seriously saying that? I just did. You heard me? How could you? And you call yourself a Nord? I do. All the sides on the table felt conflicted. I could see Jord looking at me and asking what the hell did I just say. Then, Thane John, which divine is that temple dedicated to? Vittoria Vici asked. I looked at her with a smile. For Kine. Kine? Everyone in the room was taken aback. Of course they should. In this day and age, no one worships Kine openly anymore. Kine is part of the old Nordic divines and later was replaced by Kinnereth in a Leshan doctrine that was set by the Empire. As the Empire, this kind of worship was long since gone. Even the Stormcloaks were looking at me strangely. Talos didn't exist in the old gods, but there was another aspect of him, and that was a smear. Gods are a bit tricky. They can be the same entity, but they have different aspects, and each aspect has its own personality. For example, Kine is an aspect of the warrior goddess of the storm. She was worshipped back in the days when most of the Nord women were warriors fighting alongside men in every battle. On the other hand, Kinnereth is another aspect that is associated with the sky and mostly healing. She replaced Kine when the Nordic women started to tend to their homes and left battles for the men. Another example is Arche, in the Aleshan doctrine. He is the god of death in the ceremonial meaning and is associated with the circle of life and death. In the old Nordic religion, Arche is Orki, the god of death in the sense of a grim reaper. Orki was the sole reason why humans live shorter than elves, as he cursed them once to live shorter. If not for the efforts of Ismir and Shor who managed to defeat him, the human lifespan would have fallen to 6 years old. Anyway, reverting to the old gods such as Kine, Ismir and Shor is not a crime, but no one do that practice anymore. The Empire won't really care about it, and the Stormcloak may also welcome it as a comeback for the glorious gods of the past. The only ones who will see this as a provocation are the Thalmor, and they will try to do something about it for sure. These Nordic gods are the adversaries of the elven gods and part of the reason why the worship Talos, who is very connected to the old Nordic gods, is being outlawed. In the eyes of everyone, I actually did nothing wrong. Actually, the hidden clans are mostly Daedra worshippers or old Nordic gods worshippers, the main reason why they are hidden and think of themselves as peaceful cults. In both religion and law, I am in the green zone for these parties. Also, in Winterhold we respect both law and freedom. Even if there is a member of the worshipper of Talos or even a worshipper of a Daedra, we wouldn't act like the vigilants or the law officers. However, if we can resolve these matters peacefully, why even start discriminating each other? Everyone is free to worship and free to love as long as they don't bring harm to the others or break the law. Closing these matters like that will force the two parties to go back to their factions first and come up with another plan later. Very well, this will pose no problem then. Viscount Lucius backed off reluctantly. Captain Mislav nodded and seemed to be rather disappointed that he couldn't draw me to Ulfric's side. I want to talk about something rather important. This time, it was Vittoria Vici. She didn't look at me and directed the talk to Jarl Career. My Jarl, when we asked around Winterhold lately, it seemed that all the resources and the economical spots were rented to the Dare Dragon group. Mind telling me how did that happen? Her question was not direct. She just asked about how Career gave me the power to act in the place as if is my own backyard. It was through Thane John's effort that Winterhold managed to take the road once again towards a better future. I was very pleased and decided to give Thane John all the important matters only a remarkable man like him can attend to. And here we are, ha! Jarl Career replied with a wide smile. Vittoria Vici made an innocent face and directed another question. But wouldn't it be more beneficial for Winterhold to create a competitive atmosphere? I'm sure Thane John wouldn't mind have my small company to start some business around these parts. I will make sure that Jarl Career will see these benefits firsthand too. This bitch, Alina and Joel, who were me, were about to release their killing intent. This girl tried to lure career with benefits and wanted to make a foothold in Winterhold. With no shame or honor, trying to press career with her identity, and she thought that I don't know who is she. As a matter of fact, I received a report that she paid a visit to career and introduced herself to him with her real identity, not the so-called small company owner she is playing now. Still, how can I not know one of the most important NPCs in the game? I guess I should make things clear at this point. How can Miss Vittoria's business can be called small? I said with a smile. You are exactly the last person I want in Winterhold. Haha. The Imperials glared at me, but they managed to hold themselves back in the end. Thane, please don't overestimate me. If not for my connection with Lord Lucius here, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be in this meeting. I see. So, the chief executive of Skyrim's branch of the East Empire Company and the cousin of Emperor Titus Mede too, needs a connection to meet with a mere citizen like me? To my words, both the Imperials and the Stormcloaks jumped on their feet and placed their hands on their hilts. If I am not careful during the next few minutes, the Civil War may start 4 years too early. Chapter 196, The Demands, 1. I forgot to mention that the novel got renamed because of the sites that started to steal my novel as of late. It made them get confused, but those guys still found out. Also, sorry about yesterday, even Daedric princes catch flu. I see. So, the chief executive of Skyrim's branch of the East Empire Company and the cousin of Emperor Titus Mede too, needs a connection to meet with a mere citizen like me? To my words, both the Imperials and the Stormcloaks jumped on their feet and placed their hands on their hilts. The tension was as high as Mt. Anther, and it seemed that it is not going to turn out really well. Vittoria Vici was looking at me with eyes wide open. Viscount Lucius took out a staff from his robe, and Legat Thorvar put his hands on his sword's hilt. They all were wary of the Stormcloaks on the other side of the table. Speaking of them, they also stood up with their hands on the hilts of their swords, while glaring with murderous spirit at Vittoria Vici. TSK, TSK, TSK. And I thought better of you folks. On a table of diplomacy you guys would glare at each other with such rudeness. How shameful. I couldn't help but mock them out loud. These hotheads were really going for it. The cousin of the man who sold Skyrim and Talos to the elves is right in front of us. How can you just ask us to remain silent? Captain Mislav said, while looking with hate at Vittoria Vici. Watch your tongue. What you said just now is a high treason to the Empire. If not for the Emperor's understanding nature, the likes of you would have been purged long ago. The likes of me? You filthy Imperial dog. After all, what your Empire has done, you still dare to lecture me. Humph. Barbaric folk like you are the reason why the situation is like this from the start. Why don't you just go and make your ears pointy like your elvish masters? Bunch of cowards. Dirty barbarians like yourself shouldn't be allowed to. These people were taking it too far. With a snap of my fingers, the situation changed dramatically. Hilda waved her axe at the Imperial Legate blocking his path. Jonrad drew his golden blade at the Stormcloak messenger. Wulfur held a small knife on the neck of the Imperial envoy, and Jul aimed her crossbow at Ralof. Such a nerve. To dare and aim your weapon at me, an Imperial envoy. Viscount Lucius glared at Wulfur, who gazed back at him coldly. John Dare? This is a stupid move. Legat Thorvar said. I knew you were that killer from that day. Ralof was glaring at Jul. The tension reached its peak. You bunch. You were thinking of waving your weapons at each other under my roof? Does my presence worth shit to you? So you so-called diplomats are just some mad dogs in the end. I was genuinely pissed. Starting a fight in Winterhold meant that this area will get marked for trouble. I knew from the start, but both the Empire and the Stormcloaks think so little of Winterhold. These trash. I only stirred some muddy waters, and now they want to make it into a flood. You bad-mouthed the Nords to your heart content since the minute you showed up here. Don't you think that I don't know how you tried to investigate the origin of my technologies, and even tried to interrogate some of my men about the soaring flame? I faced Viscount Lucius with facts. And you tried to make the native Nords act against the non-Nords, and went to snoop around Jarl Career to convince him to join Ulfric's shit show. I also directed some of the facts to Captain Miss Laugh. These two were actually very busy since the time they showed up in Winterhold, and were working hard to stir trouble for me. If not for my Team Zero, things would have taken a bad turn. I was gazed at with a lot of discontent and negativity by the two envoys. The Empire's orders are abs. Jarl Ulfric wants you to. They tried to retort at me at the same time. Both the Empire and Ulfric can go and suck a bag of dicks for all that I care about. To my words, all the parties fell silent. I made a clear statement. The two forces only work for their own benefits. I know very well that they will try to rip my stronghold in Winterhold apart as soon as they get the chance. The Dare Dragon group rose to power in a desolate location and didn't attract any attention. Within only 1 year, it now controls 1/9 of Skyrim's landmass, and the populace is growing at a drastic rate. Most of the Dark Elves in Windhelm and the worshippers of Talos, who are being chased by the Thalmor, chose Winterhold as a safe haven. Even a small settlement was constructed near to Whispering Mine for the Dark Elves who wanted to live near the Shrine of Azura. As a new power with that size rises, the other power will be worried and act against it right away. When I killed all the spies of the Empire, the Stormcloaks and the other forces when Alina and the rest disappeared, it made them all realize that they have underestimated the Dare Dragon Company. This is why a ginormous whale like the East Empire Company has sent its branch manager of Skyrim, Vittoria Vici, to investigate us. Actually, if the reports are accurate, Vittoria Vici just arrived at Skyrim during the last King's tournament that I didn't attend. She and her mother, Alexa Vici, had a meeting with Maven Blackbriar, and they seemed to have hit it well. As all the parties managed to get a grip of their temper, we all sat down once again. Silence took over for a while, and the two parties realized that I already know their game, and there is no point to hide poison in the honey anymore. As we were about to talk once again, the door to the meeting room opened and my secretary rushed in informing me with some new participants in the talk. "What are you doing keeping them out? Let them all in. Quickly. This is not the type of people I should keep waiting." As soon as she went out, some people clad in clean, expensive robes came in. On the lead were Nurina and Savos Aran, followed by Talfdir, and the new head of the Destruction Magic Major, Faralda. There were 4 more individuals, 2 Nords, a Khajiit, and a Wood Elf that I didn't recognize. They were all old men with massive beards, except the Khajiit, of course. He had a glorious mane. From the air around them alone, I could tell that these are all archwizards. Summing it up, 6 archwizards and 2 master wizards. One of them is a half step away from becoming an archwizard. The hell is this formation? The weakest among them should be Faralda, and she can pretty much hand me my ass if she got serious. Who on earth are these people? These are the hidden masters from the college. They are considered above that of the archmage in position and mostly hermits who live in seclusion. They are also the ones who helped me survive this long in an incorporeal state. The augur was the one who answered me. Such a thing actually exists. They don't feel as powerful as Lord Divath Fyr, but their auras are equivalent to Nurina and Savos. Why in the world are those monsters here? The newcomers came in and sat in a corner of the room. Everyone could tell that these 8 are here to observe, as the only action they took was nodding for us to continue. With the powerful feeling that gave off and Nurina's known status as my master, these people were on my side. Eventually, everyone silently sat down. Each group gathered their heads together and started to think of the situation. A power arose, but it was still small and meaningless. Then 2 hidden clans joined the fray and supported the new power, making it able to be a small, strong force. The plan was to oppress them fast and drag them to a side, but a new player moved. The College of Winterhold, that normally didn't participate in any sort of a power struggle, showed its full power. No one was ready for this change of events. All they could do now is play it plain and throw all the cards on the table. We have demands. The Empire has demands too. We will hear them. If they are unjust, then don't blame our rudeness. As I replied, the people on the table turned gloomy once again. I then pointed to the Stormcloak messenger to speak first. Very well. Jarl Career, as the ruler of Winterhold, We ask you to open the docks for our ships and allow us to resupply and pass through the northern waters." Captain Mislav directed his words to Jarl Career instead of me. It seemed they still had some hope that Career would work against me. "But I can't make things difficult for John Dare." That's what Career replied with. Everyone other than my inner circle looked at Career with eyes wide open. What kind of reply was that? This man, if he could just be swayed to any side, he can strip me from my title as a Thane and end the contract with the Dare Dragon Company. To them, he was just stubborn, but they finally noticed what is wrong. Jarl Career, this is unrelated to Thane John. We just asked. I can't make things difficult for John Dare. Career answered with the same words once again. The Imperials and the Stormcloaks looked at each other, trying to figure out what is going on. Jarl Career, all we as. I can't make things difficult for John Dare. I just can't. I can't make. It seems that Career. EXE is not responding. The scene became a bit bizarre, just like I wanted it to be. Program 2. Reboot. I only said those words. Career, who was glitching, stopped all of a sudden. The mental burden seemed to have overheated the circuits in his bean-sized brain. With just that, Career turned normal once again. The light of understanding shone on the room. Career was now proven to be nothing but a doll in my hands. Captain Mislav clicked his tongue and looked at me. Once a puppet, always a puppet. To his words, I just smiled in return. Career was a sorry piece of garbage that sold Winterhold for pirates. No one had pity for the likes of him, and the mystery about me controlling him was solved, or rather became more mysterious. Swaying him with money or anything is now impossible. Sigh. Thane John. Captain Mislav gave up and looked at me. If you want to pass through the northern waters, then it's all good and fine. According to the law, these waters only belong to Skyrim, which means everyone has the right to navigate through them. However, things are different about the coastline. We can only allow trading ships. Any military ship or operation near the coastline with no further approval is a direct aggression. Fair enough. Captain Mislav nodded. The Empire would like to send reinforcements to Fort Castav south of Winterhold. Viscount Lucius. As a Thane and a law enforcer of the great kingdom of Skyrim and the Empire, I would pretty much welcome more stability and security to the hold I serve in. Still, the fort would always demand supplies and recruits at a low cost. I would welcome the idea in any time of stability, but right now I would prefer to set up some rules and numbers. Great. I would send the fort commander and inform him of all the details. Viscount Lucius replied. This concluded the first round, which was rather peaceful. Chapter 197. The Demands, 2. From now onward, there will be no publishing on the side novel. All the plus 18 content will be posted here. The first round of demands was concluded rather peacefully. Not sure about the following ones, though. The other thing we demand is to allow the worship of Talos and prevent the Thalmor from carrying out any genocide against our brethren. Here it comes. Before I could reply, Viscount Lucius butted in. The Empire demands to keep the ban over the worship of Talos and not commit any breach to the terms of the White Gold Concordat between the Empire and the Almeri Dominion. The two glared at each other as their demands clashed. I had to make my standing clear then. As a neutral side in the struggle between the Empire's faction and the Talos faction, your requests pose threat to our standing. It is true that the worship of Talos is banned by law, but that doesn't mean I am enforcing such a thing as controlling what people worship and what they believe in. Therefore, any public construction of any shrine dedicated to the divine Talos will be considered a felony, and its punishment is imprisonment. However, any act of worship to the divine Talos behind closed doors is not a thing we can control, and we would rather not get involved. This was my standing. What about the Thalmor? Ralof asked. I don't have the authority over any law enforcer dispatched by the consent of the Empire. The Stormcloaks and the Imperials both glared at me. It would be much better for both sides if I took a hostile standing against the Thalmor. But, as a Thane with limited authorities, I am not responsible for their safety if anything unfortunate happened to them while they are in Winterhold. The killing intent behind my smile was clear. I am not going to officially act against the Thalmor. This will make the Thalmor force the Empire to act against me. The game of politics in this world was rather simple, so I am not going to fall for such an obvious trap. In my past life, I lived in Egypt, which was the hub of all political drama in the Arab countries. Nations like the Arabian Gulf states, Palestine, Iran, Libya, Yemen, and Syria were all around Egypt both geographically and politically. As Egypt was at the center, I was pretty much familiar with the inner struggles of those nations had in their inner factions. Also, the superpowers in my past life used to play a game which was very simple to understand. It was called Divide and Conquer. Just highlight a small faction of people and demonize them with propaganda. This small faction will naturally grow tired of the persecution and convert into the creed of radicalism. Then wars will start in these nations where the superpowers don't want to invest any troops or money to conquer. Later, they would claim them under words like having shared borders or peacemaking. The game was a cliché that an otherworlder like me would smell from a mile away, especially when it was being played by the Thalmor. Of course, the Empire understood that too, but the Stormcloaks are too hot-headed to even care about this fact. So far, Ulfric's actions have only brought nothing but harm to the people of Skyrim from the time of the Markarth accident, and how he caused a massive faction like the Madmen of the Reach to become the Forsworn, the sworn enemies of Nords, and his demands that caused the Aldmeri Dominion to force the Empire and start the so-called genocide of the worshippers of Talos. With me stepping aside from officially clashing with the Thalmor, I have taken a different route than the Stormcloaks and showed that I am a friend to the Empire. The Stormcloaks will not understand that move fully and will translate it as I am, just trying to be as partial as possible. The Empire, however, will translate my actions as opening the road for them while having some privileges on my terms. The future of Winterhold will take two different scenarios depending on who will control Skyrim in the future. Still, the power of Winterhold was fully recognized by now. The Imperials shared their thoughts together, and so did the Stormcloaks. They all nodded, and with that, the second round was concluded. The third round was about to start, and it seemed that the Imperials and the Stormcloaks were about to clash in opinions again. I had to calm down the mood this time. Miss Vici, I heard you got engaged to an old friend of mine, Isgir Snowshod from Rift Inn? Oh, it is true. Isgir and I got engaged lately after we were introduced to each other 4 months ago. Oh, how amazing. I am almost envious at him. Someone with the status, the beauty, and the intellect of Miss Vittoria sure have a lot of suitors. Ahaha, you flatter me, Thane John. To this wonderful piece of news, I should prepare a worthy gift for Miss Vici. Really no need. Lady Maven Blackbriar and Queen Elisif have already sunk me head to toe with engagement gifts. How come you say that? Do you want people to say that John Dare is not generous to his friends? I smiled and looked at Uncle Jord. Captain Jord, you promised me that rare horse from the finest stable in Clan Firemane, right? Oh, you want that? Jord was taken aback and seemed confused. That horse will be my gift to Miss Vittoria, the rarest horse breed in Skyrim, the snow horse, Frost. Everyone opened their eyes wide, but the fireman smiled wryly. Frost is a horse from a very unique and rare breed. It appeared in the game and belonged to Maven Blackbriar. What I found out when I was at the clan that Maven made a deal with the Firemans to buy this horse, but the deal was cancelled when the problem between the Firemans and the Blackbriars arose because of me. Now, the horse that Maven wanted so much couldn't be hers. On the other hand, the Vici nobles were very friendly to Maven Blackbriar. Maven also had a good relationship with the Snowshod clan and used them to establish her power in Rift Inn. More to that, Isgir Snowshod was a sissy boy that got played well by Maven, and she made him put most of his clan's wealth in her business, then gave him a small management position. Isgir Snowshod and Vittoria Vici got their engagement arranged by Maven so that she can link her source of money and her connection with the Empire, which will provide her with a strong backing and immunity from any threat in Tamriel. With even the Thalmor's interference, Maven would be very much invincible, and that is bad news for me. Now, with me giving Frost to Vittoria Vici, Maven will be pissed off, but it won't change anything. At least, it would make for a good fraction between the East Empire Company and the Blackbriar clan, but that's a long-term game. Vittoria Vici and I started exchanging smiles and words of compliments until we arrived at the final play. We would like to talk about Japhet's folly. With these words, not only the Imperials and the Stormcloaks, but also the Firemans and we from the Dare Dragon group participated in the glaring contest. This ripe fruit is the reason why everyone was here in the first place. Japhet's Folly is a very important place. It is the island where the last of the Bloodsails clan and the Blood Horkers pirates gathered. After their defeat in the Battle of Kynesgrove, the safest stronghold for these vermins was at this place. I was sending ships to patrol the area lately, and according to the reports from my people and the Firemans, Japhet's Folly was also monitored by both the Empire and the Stormcloaks. The pirates and the remnants of the Bloodsails all gathered there with their treasures and money. They tried to hire Argonian pirates many times, but the Dare Dragon ships and the Fireman's fleet were openly confronting any coming and going pirate ships around Japhet's Folly. Still, that wouldn't stop the vultures from the Empire and the Stormcloak to lust over the treasures of the besieged pirates. What about Japhet's Folly? I replied in the most unfriendly tone possible. They all realized that this time, I wasn't trying to act peacefully and stand aside. These pirates have plagued the sea for years. Windhelm has lost a lot of resources and money to them. The East Empire Company also lost a lot of goods and personnel to those scum. On top of that, we were fighting them for years. It looks like the riches have blinded them. I silently stood up and rested my palms on the table, then spoke. At times I hunt bandits. When I start looting the bandits and in accordance to law, I can loot whatever I want, even if it is some long-lost national treasure, and it will belong to me in the end. Now you lot want to take a share of the booty that Winterhold sacrificed its sons and daughters to secure? Thanejon, we understand your feelings, but according to the law, we also have a claim. We don't plan to deny Winterhold of its claim as well. Captain Mislav stood up and glared at the Imperials, trying to say that it is a different story when it comes to Imperials. Thanejon, beware the wrath of the Empire. We are indeed giving you a lot of face because we understand that you are the sole hope for a whole region in Skyrim. Still, we won't tolerate being pushed around. Viscount Lucius stood and glared at the Stormcloaks. These bastards won't budge, and whether side I choose to loot Japhet's Folly with, the other will remember it and will be my enemy in the future. Were they trying to corner me into this choice from the start? These cunning foxes. But John Dare is not the one who will be forced to pick between one or two. John Dare will make three. And here comes the Thursdayum. Hi Tinvok Goltnu, you speak nonsense. Doozy Ira. Insolence is the one thing I cannot abide. My people suffered for ages. For more than 70 years this land was plagued with pirates and thugs. Its people bled so much. They are citizens of Locoltii, of the Empire. They are true sons and daughters of Kais, of Skyrim. And you? Where were you? Did any of you offer a helping hand? No, nothing. Worse than nothing. You made deals and paid fees so that the pirates let you off, and who bled because of these actions? Gevoldseed, Winterhold. My words, enforced by the Thursdayum, overwhelmed these greedy bastards in all aspects. One can speak the Thursdayum without causing any magic to be unleashed, but the words themselves will echo far and wide. With that, they who thought they are untouchable lost all their nerves in front of a dragon tongue. In the end, the meeting continued and I managed to avoid being forced on a side. After a few hours, the meeting came to a conclusion. When the summer arrives, 2 months from today, anyone who has a claim to the riches in Japhet's Folly can sail to the island and try to take it by force. Whoever has the ability to claim them shall do so by their own force. Both the Empire and the Stormcloaks have large fleets, and they weren't afraid of the Soaring Flame ship as they knew it was powered by soul gems. I didn't give in to the temptations, as whoever I side with will make the other hold a grudge, and I really wanted no part in the war. As all the parties stood up to leave, Vittoria Vici approached me. Thanejon, I was interested in discussing something in private. Oh, of course, Miss Vici. To my office? Very well. I led her to my office in the other room. Both Viscount Lucius and Legate Thorvar wanted to join, but she promised she wouldn't be late. After some time, John was sitting alone behind his office, closing his eyes and resting his head back when he heard the door knocking. Come in. Boss, it is Legate Thorvar. Let him in. After a while, Legate Thorvar came into the room. Thane John, Miss Vici was here a while ago, but we can't seem to find her. Oh, she asked me for a pass letter to enter the college. She took the pass and left right away. Right away? As Legate Thorvar asked, John's face twitched for a second, but he soon managed to hold a grip. Here is another pass. You can go look for her over there. John offered Legate Thorvar a small piece of paper and smiled. He didn't even stand up, but his smile was cold, as if he wanted Legate Thorvar to piss off right away. Really no need. If Miss Vici is in the college, then there is no need to worry. Excuse me. I will take my leave. It seemed that John's show of his Thursdayum was still vivid in Legate Thorvar's mind, and he left the office directly. As he did so, John let out a sigh of relief and looked under his desk. See, I had to lie for your sake. Down there, a certain imperial girl sat on her knees between John's legs while polishing his spear with her mouth. It's though huge slurp. I cod tick onai. It is so huge, it could take me all night. Vittoria Vici, stripped of all nobility and dignity, spoke with little John in her mouth. John only smiled. Plenty of time, my sweet, plenty of time. Chapter 198, The Fall of Vittoria Vici, plus 18. Maybe plus 21. John's show of his Thursdayum was still vivid in Legate Thorvar's mind, and he left the office directly. As he did so, John let out a sigh of relief and looked under his desk. See, I had to lie for your sake. Under his desk, a certain imperial girl kneeled on her knees and was polishing his spear with her mouth frantically. It's though huge slurp. I cod tick onai. It is so huge, it could take me all night. Vittoria Vici, stripped of all nobility and dignity, spoke with John's spear in her mouth. John only smiled. Plenty of time, my sweet, plenty of time. John put his hand on Vittoria's head and started pushing his dick into her mouth. Vittoria's eyes were all tearful, and she started snorting with each push to catch her breath. After he was fully ignited, John took out his dick from her mouth and left her up to rest. Asterisk cough cough, asterisk this is crazy. Will such a thing be able to fit in me? Vittoria looked at little John that was in its full power. The sheer size alone was just a shock for her. I am not sure about your sexual experiences, but something is telling me that you will try it anyway, John replied as he lifted her up and put her on the empty side of his desk. With fast hand movements, Vittoria was already naked in front of John. She had a sense of crisis, but she knew that there is no going back now. She was willing to do it for her goals, but she couldn't help but feel a bit scared. This will totally ruin me. Vittoria compared the size of John's dick with her forearm and exclaimed to herself. John's smile grew wider as little John, that was being cultivated with the essence of the trolls, got praised like that. He pushed his middle finger in Vittoria's mouth and made her suck it before taking it out to her wet pussy. She started moaning inwardly to not let her voice out. I have sealed the voices in this room. You can scream to your heart's content. John used telekinesis on his own hand and started to make it vibrate. Just as he did that, Vittoria's screams went out of control. Yes, like that, do it again. She fell on her back and started squirming while playing with her boobs and biting her nipples in front of John. He smiled as he saw that bitch in the heat act out to her heart content. John undressed right away and went over Vittoria, sticking his tongue in her mouth, and they got melted over each other in a big round of kisses. Vittoria was really an attractive brunette. Her skin was tan and her hair was silky brown. She also was tall and had a good build, which made John's size not seem too large compared to her. Even though she was an imperial noble and from a great house at that, she wasn't a virgin and seemed to be well experienced in sex, which made John wonder for a while. He had no time to think anyway and decided to kick off. He centered the tip of his dick on her vagina, and she hugged him tightly, ready to take little John's full power. John pushed his dick in and Vittoria screamed. So big. My head. Going crazy. John didn't show any mercy and held Vittoria up while he was standing. She started to slide down all the way on his dick, and all sorts of moans escaped from her mouth. Just as he could reach her womb, John laid her back on the desk and held her legs high. Her awesome figure started giggling with each thrust John performed, and she was on hallucinating with her eyes going devoid of all color. She was completely under the effect of John's dick. John switched the position and turned Vittoria on her front with her, but facing him. He couldn't help but slap that bouncy thing. Asterisk paw. Star. Who is a little bitch? Asterisk huff, just do it. Asterisk paw. Answer me. Aya. John slapped her bouncy ass once again and Vittoria screamed with pleasure. Say it. Asterisk paw. Star. Me. I am your little bitch. Well done. Here is your reward. John aimed his dick once again and penetrated her pussy deeper than before. Vittoria jumped up drooling and tearing with a frenzied face. I like these expressions. John passed his hand over Vittoria's head and held the tip of her nose up by his middle and ring fingers. Oink for me. With madness all over her eyes, Vittoria couldn't resist the pleasure and started oinking for John. Her appearance was pitiful as John toyed with her as he wanted. She was having the time of her life and would give anything including honor and dignity for pleasure right now. Please, I am going crazy. I am becoming an idiot. Vittoria started losing all sense. She squirted many times already, but John was still as hard as ever. With his experiences with a pro like Alishka, Vittoria was pretty much a toy. Don't forget that you brought this upon yourself. I am sorry. Please. Please what? Huh? I'm not sure if you want to get fucked more or want to be relieved quickly. Come on, don't be shy. You are my little bitch after all. Please, ravage my slutty pussy with your fat dick. Foo-foo. So you still want more? Do it. Come in my pussy. I beg you. Squirt your thick semen into my thirsty pussy. John was pleased with Vittoria's attitude and carried her up while fucking her. He then increased the speed, and a strong load of cum went out into Vittoria's pussy, making her lose or sense once again. John was still trying to pleasure himself too, and didn't stop until his load was fully released in Vittoria, who was totally mind-broken at this point. She only hung her head to the side with a blissful expression. John carried her, then put her on his custom-made modern couch and sat beside her. Her head was on his chest, and she was still having a nice dream. John looked at her and sighed. Sigh. It is your fault to overestimate yourself so much. Did you think someone like me can just be seduced that easily? John still didn't want to harm the girl, and he used some magic on her womb and pushed all his cum out. It would be troublesome if that girl got pregnant. He was still nice to her and started healing her with a powerful spell. Not a minute later, Vittoria came back to the world of the living. She looked around herself and saw her naked self beside John, who was also naked. She realized that she was completely and utterly defeated. Not only that, she was also completely tamed by him. She looked at John's handsome face meaningfully and felt conflicted about her defeat. Should she be happy that she experienced heaven, or should she be pissed at herself as she lost all leverage and instead got owned by John? John, who was resting his head and closing his eyes, sensed that Vittoria returned to consciousness and spanked her but once again. How was it? Vittoria felt bitter to admit it, but she rather enjoyed herself to a height she never knew before. She thought about how did she get herself into this mess from the start. 2 weeks ago, when she decided to take down the new force in Winterhold with the help of the Imperial Envoy of Castle Dor and Legat Thorvar, the administrator of Skyrim's Imperial Legion, she invested a lot of resources to send spies to Winterhold to get her the news about John Dare. She discovered that John Dare was raising a private force with mysterious magical technologies and really managed to expand far and wide in Winterhold. He was now the ultimate ruler behind the shadows in that hold. This was a situation that had to be dealt with quickly and swiftly. She was still the new appointed manager in Skyrim's branch of the East Empire Company, and bringing down John Dare, or even making him a subordinate, would be a very notable achievement with the anticipated rise of the Ulfric Stormcloak. But when she arrived at Winterhold, all sorts of difficulties rose up. Even though John Dare was absent from town, she could feel that a hidden hand was destroying everything she and her accomplices worked for. It was frustrating, but it was already too late to move as John Dare has returned, and it seemed that the firemen's, the force that fully supports John Dare, was also here as well as a Stormcloak messenger. Before the meeting with John Dare, she had made an initial impression that all Nord diplomats are loud and brash. They would also not delve too much into politics and would rather insult each other than drink it aside, and mostly they would agree to disagree. John Dare, however, was playing with them in all aspects of politics and law. It was hard to think of him as a Nord, but rather a cunning Breton. He played on every note and danced on every tone. He took what he wanted without worsening his standing with any major force. His way was as brash as Nord's, but was annoyingly provocative like those old officials from the White Gold Tower, the Imperial Palace. Rather than seeing him as a threat that need to be rooted, Vittoria took a liking on such a free thinker and decided to claim him for herself as one of her subordinates no matter what. The best way she could do it was to seduce him. That was an obvious and easy strategy. She did it like 100 times already and was mostly the reason why she, a 19-year-old noble girl, rose to the highest position an employee can reach in the East Empire Company. Her grandmother even taught her that all men would fall for a girl once she smiles and say some nice words to them, let alone seducing them sexually. Also, how hard can it be with her beauty and status? Still, John was not in that category. She miscalculated. She miscalculated badly. This guy already had his own army of wenches that he started his small empire with. She was so idiotic and inexperienced to not notice such an obvious thing. What in oblivion have I done? Vittoria felt defeated, but strangely she was not depressed about it. She could even feel more ecstatic with what happened just now. Her conflicted thoughts didn't make her notice that he was still in John's embrace while being naked together. She even stuck her head on his chest more. Subconsciously, she recognized him as a being that she can't go against. John, on the other hand, was sitting calmly while having Vittoria beside him and caressing her hair and fair skin. "That was not bad," he said. Vittoria didn't know what to reply with. "You seem to have a lot of experience in sex?" Vittoria nodded. "Multiple lovers?" he asked. "Yes, back at Cyrodiil. I had some private lovers." John frowned. "Is that okay for a noble lady?" It is not a new practice in some of Cyrodiil's closed circle, especially for a follower of Dibella. Aha, I see now. It became clear now as Vittoria revealed that she is a follower of Dibella, the goddess of beauty and love who has nearly a dozen different cults, mostly devoted to women and artists, and some even to erotic instruction, which was a very common topic to Dibella's followers. This was mostly a public knowledge that John knew even before he got reincarnated. After all, Dibella is his favorite divine after Shor, Kine, and Talos. Still, he asked a sly question. How will Ashjir feel about it, though? Vittoria smiled mockingly. It is just a business marriage to tie up Eastern Skyrim with the East Empire Company to control any resource that Windhelm can use against the Empire. And if we spoke about Ashjir, then he is just a shy, pitiful virgin. Oh, I feel bad for him now. What about your toy boys? I only managed to bring one with me in Skyrim as Ashtant, but I am not really sure if anything will work on me now. She smiled weakly, then touched herself and whispered, "You completely ruined me." John giggled evilly. "Fine then, you can come find me if you want to play it. I'll take you to your words, John." Vittoria spoke to John intimately, but the latter gazed back at her coldly and flicked her forehead with her finger, causing her to hold it from the pain. "Call me master." Vittoria's eyes widened, not expecting this humiliation. Still, something inside her made her submit in a second. With a horny look in her eyes, Vittoria buried her face on John's embrace once again. "By your wish, master." "That's a good little bitch," John replied while patting Vittoria's head. After a short while, Vittoria started to stand up, but her eyes landed on little John. Why is that? Still standing? Don't mind it. I won't ask more from you tonight." Vittoria let out a sigh of relief, but her eyes never parted from little John that was still in full readiness. John moved his hand and pressed a button on the small table beside him. With that, the secretary girl entered the room without knocking, which almost caused Vittoria to panic. "I want you to help Miss Vici clean up and lead her home," The secretary nodded and started helping Vittoria with her clothes. John kept sitting on his couch until Vittoria left, and the secretary came back to report to him. Even the emperor's cousin couldn't escape from the boss's golden hand. The secretary said casually. Hee. Thanks, Sev. I wasn't trying to say it is a good thing. This may cause us some serious problems. Come on, you heard the girl yourself. She has a ton of lovers waiting for her in Cyrodiil, and with her being my little bitch, we will be able to get some valuable information about the movements of the East Empire Company and also about the Empire itself right from the source. Did you plan this from the start? Not at all. Who would have thought that this imperial spoiled noble girl would try to seduce me with her body? John kept chatting with the secretary, casually even though he was completely naked. Actually, that girl is Sev, one of the first girls that got to work for John back when he started constructing the bathhouse. She was also one of the bathhouse's queen bees, the most expensive girls. It was when the management department got established that she decided to retire and asked to be one of the members of the management team. With her talent, she rose quickly and finally became John's personal secretary. Fine. Now as we are all alone, please handle this, John said as he pointed at little John. Sigh. Fine, but I will demand a raise, Sev said as she started to undress. Chapter 199. Nefertiti's Magic. I woke up the next day in my office beside Sev. Due to my late-night activities, everyone celebrated together and forgot about me. Joel and Nefertiti seemed to have crashed the night with Alina at my place, and the firemen's joined them too. Okay, what's on my schedule? Sev handed me my morning coffee and answered. A servant from the college came with a word from Lady Nerina. She is summoning at noon, so I pushed anything else after it. Good. I need to thank her for yesterday and inquire about those mysterious masters. There was that high elf elder that goes by Master Alchemist Nerilian. How do you want me to kick him away? Kick away? Are you out of your damn mind? Apologize to him for me, and tell him that I will meet him as soon as I finish up with Nerina. Okay, what about the firemen's? Leave them at the bottom of the schedule. Sev moved her quill on a piece of paper and nodded. Everything is in order, boss. Good. Is there any news from Team Zero? Nothing. Unexpected. The Stormcloaks left yesterday immediately, and the Imperials are waiting for their ship to be loaded. They are expected to leave tomorrow. Glad to hear. It also seemed that your cat, H. I pointed a finger at Sev with a spark of fire on it. I mean her Meowjesty Few. Her Meowjesty Nefertiti went on a hunt last night alone. A full moon night, huh? It is okay. I can sense her location anyway, so no need to keep an eye on her anymore. She is a big girl now. Noted. The last report is about some of the firemen sneaking to the bathhouse last night. I see. Did any one of them look like me? The report mentioned that the girls got confused when they saw someone how resembled you, but it seemed to be a baseless misunderstanding. How did you know about that? SK. That bastard. Make 7 copies of that last report. Ask our craftsman to carve one of them on a plate of steel. How evil. I got you now. After picking a fast breakfast from a food stall in the newly established market square, I rushed to the college in a hurry. The one who received me was the second in command of the mysticism department, Loneth. You are late? Well, hello, stranger. Long time no see. Right back to you. I heard you did well with the diplomats from the Empire and Windhelm. Good job keeping it peaceful around here. Glad to be of service. What about you? What were you up to? I just arrived yesterday from High Rock with some new research paper. Lady Nerina said I can borrow you. SK. Do I look like some pair of glasses you borrow from your friend? I am a businessman now. My time is... Smack. And some book landed on my head. I am sorry, Teacher Loneth. Call me whenever you are free. I followed her silently to Nerina's room with a gloomy mood and a bruised head. As we entered, I could see some people drinking tea together there. These were Faralda, Nerina, and the Khajiit Archwizard, one of the 4 hermits from yesterday's. John, this is Elder Joe, Nerina said. I am John Dare. It is an honor to finally meet you, sir. The Cagiate elder opened his narrowly open eyes, which gleamed with a sharp light. Foo-foo. Good seedling. Jonaud is pleased to see you too, John Dare. Come, have a seat. Joe before the name means respected person. Jonaud heard that John loves cats. Is that true? Jonaud asked in a third-person figure of speech, like most of his kind. It is indeed true. Shame. Jonaud prefers dogs. Traitor to his kind. How dare he? To my change of expression, Elder Jonaud laughed. Ah, hairless ones. They can be very unreasonable. What is wrong if Cagiate like dogs, Dogs are fun to play tricks on. Ha ha ha. The traitor cat was having fun on his own. Anyway, Jonaud would like to thank you for safekeeping Winterhold and rebuilding it once again. It was something Jonaud wished for dearly, but the policies always prevented from helping. I am glad to be of service. Also, please convey Jonaud's regards to your grandfather Tormund. Tell him to come and have a drink with Jonaud if he is free. The hell? Why does this elder know that I am a firemage? I looked at Nerina, who wasn't really surprised or anything, but she didn't answer me. What is going on? Jonaud and Tormund are friends from way before the firemans leave Winterhold. We used to sniff moon sugar together when we were kids. He could even last more than Jonaud. Ahaha. Oh, so, drug addiction is a thing in my clan? Good to know. The old Cagiate kept cracking strange jokes and telling stories for almost an hour. My head almost fell from his lame old jokes. I wanted to suggest for his name to be Dro Naud. Dro means grandpa. The strange thing was that Faralda, Loneth, and Nerina were smiling with every joke as if it is that funny. I also had to laugh too. Being a student means you must laugh to every joke an elder teacher says, or one can say goodbye to his grades. After the old cat had his fun for almost an hour, his tone turned serious. John Dare, Jonaud has something to ask you about. Your familiar beast? The little one that was beside you in the meeting yesterday. Can I see her? Of course. Is there anything wrong? No, my friend. Jonaud is just curious about something. It seemed that this was the topic that he was after from the start. Still, why Nefertiti? Even Nerina seemed not aware of Jonaud's purpose, but she nodded for me that it is okay. All I had to do is to look to the side and gesture with my hand. A second later, Nefertiti popped up under Nerina's desk and jumped on my lap. Oh, so little one was here after all. Jonaud couldn't feel this little one at all. I know, even I can't feel her without the bond we share. Interesting. The fireman's bonds with beasts are fascinating. Much potential when used right. Used right? Foo-foo. Jonaud doesn't need to tell you something obvious. You understand so much already about magic and beasts. Why don't you tell Jonaud what you think? I am not really sure, but I know that mage sentry cats and some other intelligent creatures are able to tell magic apart, and some magical creatures has the ability to cast simple spells. Wait, are you saying that it is possible for Nefertiti to use magic? Jonaud smiled. Little one already can. What? Nefertiti can? I held her in my hands and looked to her in the eyes. Can you? She just tilted her head adorably. It doesn't seem that she can though. I said. Jonaud can tell. Little one can hide in the shadows without anyone finding out about her location, which is a magical ability she imitated from someone. Who do you think she imitated it from? From Joel? I asked. From you, dimwit. Nerina replied. Oh, I can do that, but still, that's an ability granted to me by the Shadow Stone's star constellation. Why would it? Oh, you said that she imitated. Jonaud is pleased that you are this perceptive. Cool. Does that mean that she can imitate my other magic and the Threesome in the future? Maybe not too perceptive. Jonaud seemed a bit disappointed. That time, it was Loneth who spoke. Unlike humans, elves, best folk, Akavir, and high-ranked Daedra, other creatures have limited access to magic or a natural ability to use a unique form of magic. I already know that. Jonaud thinks that Little One has been influenced by you, John Dare. Jonaud can tell that Little One can hardly be called a normal mage sentry cat anymore. I know about her abilities, but what does it mean for her to be influenced by me? Simply put it like this. Little one is from a species of cats that is sensitive to both in the aspects of sensing it and getting affected by it. Little one has gained an ability related to the theory anthropy and encountered strange energies which caused her ability to mutate even more. Something like an evolution? You can say that. So, what kind of magic she can use? Jonaud smiled and looked at Nefertiti closely. It is. Jonaud left Nerina's place and I sat opposite to her. What was with him just now? I asked. Impressive, right? She said. I can tell, but why is he interested? And why did he came to tell me personally? Life is dull for those kinds of hermits. Didn't you hear the jokes he cracked? Faralda said. Yeah, thank goodness my head is still fine. Well, it is good that you only smiled. If you argued with a grandpa like Jonaud, he can go on forever. Nope, 1 hour is my limit. But what is his real identity? And those other 3 hermits from yesterday? I asked the question that was on my mind. They are the core part of the hidden force behind the college. They reside here, but they don't go in public. Hidden force? I thought the college is only an educational facility. It is, but there are generations of strong masters that grew up in this place. While some left to make a mark in the world, some stayed and decided to watch over the younger generations. I see. But why did they come to the meeting yesterday? Think of it as a way to thank you for keeping the town around their college safe from wars. If any problem struck, it will affect the students and some massive quarrels may start. Good to know. Anyone above the rank of a scholar can get in touch with these hermits as long as one is willing to be part of the hidden force of the college. Your case is an exception, though. Faralda kept lecturing me about the hidden force and how important it is. It seemed that if not for them, the college would have been swallowed by the other forces a long time ago. It is logical and all, but where were these people in the game? Shouldn't they have appeared when the college was in its time of need? I guess I'd have to find out on my own. Still, for Nefertiti to be able to use that magic, I am impressed. My research can help her if you're interested. Lonith mentioned the important topic now. I am interested, of course. This is not just a thing that I can let slide by, I said as I played with the sleepy Nefertiti on my lap. To think that this cute, fluffy, adorable child can use one of the most fearsome types magic, the shadow magic. Chapter 200, Shadow Magic. Yes, an extra chapter because this is CH 200, and we made 3M views. It has been, and it still is a great memorable journey for me. Thank you for all the support, and let's keep going. Asterisk, don't forget. What is shadow magic, one might wonder. Shadow magic is an obscure but powerful form of magic. It was first harnessed by Azra Nightwielder, who was the first to discover that shadow was not simply an absence of light, but a reflection of possible worlds created by forces in conflict. Shadows can be produced by mundane forces such as light hitting a rock, or by more powerful forces such as nations at war. Shadow magic involves the manipulation of shadows to affect the forces creating it. In this way, shadow magic rivals even the power of the Elder Scrolls themselves, having the power to potentially change the past, present, and future through the manipulation of shadow. With shadow magic, shadows could be absorbed to strengthen oneself, or could be molded into physical forms, such as weapons. Shadow magic could also be used to visit other realms, to assist alternative versions of yourself and request their aid. Shadow mages are also capable of draining the life force and health from their foes. And if that is not enough for you, then I don't know what else is. Do you understand now? Meanie. Nope, totally nothing. I forced Nefertiti to take her child form to train her on sensing magic, but the process is rather... How do I describe this? It is like swallowing an egg through the nose. John. Who is that girl? Nerina asked. Nefertiti. Help me. Homan is a meanie. John. When did you start to abuse kids? Like, never. Nerina didn't even listen and pushed me to the side, then carried Nefertiti in her arms. Come here, cutie. Bad John was bullying you? I can beat Bad John 100 times for you. Just call me Mama. Oh boy. Her motherly instincts are activated again. This is not good. Don't beat Human. Nefertiti stuck up for me. I knew she won't sell me. She even transformed back to her normal form and hid behind me. Wah. Wait. I still haven't had enough. To see such a cute child, with cat ears and a tail. Oblivion take me. I could almost understand why John liked fluffy stuff. How on earth can anyone resist fluffy things? Just let me have one more look at her. Nurina looked at me with pitiful expressions. Just no touching or acting creepy. Nefertiti is sensitive. Fine, as she replied. I turned around trying to reach for Nefertiti, who was behind me. I can't seem to find her, though. Where did she go? I looked around, but I didn't see her anywhere. Did she go into stealth again? Nurina asked. No, I feel her. She is pretty close. Way too close, actually. It was a strange feeling, but it is actually strange. I moved around, but she was still close. She is not in your pants, isn't she? Nurina said in a mocking tone. No, she prefers hoods. My pants is where my dragon is. Swoosh. You kiss your mama with that mouth? I just avoided a death blow in case if you were wondering what the swoosh was. Just kidding. Goddamn it. Hold it, woman. There was a book resting deep in the wall behind me in case if you were wondering about what made the swoosh too. Still, we were unable to find Nefertiti even with that strange feeling of her being very close. Human. And now I am hearing her voice in my head. Okay, this is weird. I started moving around the room and scanning the area with magic, and so did Nurina. Nefertiti, where are you? Can my voice reach you? Human. It is scary. Shit, something is wrong. I started searching faster with an agitated feeling, but stop moving around. I was yelled at by Nefertiti's voice. Okay, what's wrong? She told me not to move. Why? I don't know. Hey, why are you looking at my butt? While I was answering Nurina, she averted her eyes and looked behind me. Not your butt, you dolt. Look over there. What she pointed at was actually my own shadow, which was having some black smoke coming from it. I felt a familiar feeling from the aura that black smoke and didn't feel threatened at all. A second later, a small black figure popped out from my shadow, and as you can't guess, Nefertiti. This is new. Nurina was taken aback. Human. Don't leave me. Nefertiti meowed and jumped right to my face. This was the way she hugs people, so I hugged her back on my face. Okay, calm down. What was that just now? Her answers were a series of meows, which I started translating for Nurina. It seemed that she fell in my shadow once she tried to hide from you behind me. Fell? She said so. It was a new matter to discuss. No one falls in shadows unless it is a shadow magic. We looked at each other. But why now of all times? Yes, I mean we just started researching it. It can't be just a coincidence. Just like she said, it can hardly be this easy for Nefertiti to use shadow magic just as we started researching it. System, can you review my activity log since the moment we started researching? Confirmed. The system started to calculate it and showed me the results. There was a lot of useless stuff like how many times I breathed and how many steps I walked from Nurina's place to my laboratory under the company's building. Then exclude everything except my interactions with Nefertiti and my magic activity. Confirmed. Another shorter screen appeared. Let's see. Could it be because I patted her like 100 times all day over to this place? I asked Nurina. Her gaze was piercing as ever. Nope, definitely not that one. Oh, I guess it is because I supplied her with a lot of magicka, so she can be able to manipulate it. After a bit of argument, we decided that this is the right guess. Even though Nefertiti can sense magic, she barely had any magicka, and that's why I supplied her with mine. According to Nurina, with my strong magicka inside Nefertiti, she couldn't control it fully, and when she decided to hide behind me using the normal stealth technique she imitated from me, she accidentally activated a greater magic which she could meld into my shadow with. But that's not logical. How can she just use magic like that? Even Spriggans and vampires need to cast it as spells. I questioned. It's actually pretty logical. Logic doesn't really apply that well with shadow magic, and your cat has gone through a lot of weird events by simply following you around. So you are saying that me using logic to try and teach her magic is pretty much useless. I see. Just make sure that she builds up enough magicka for herself and to practice any shadow technique she arrives to on her own. Teaching her is useless, but inspiring her may work. Nerina gave me a lot of ideas. I may be knowledgeable, but I am a horrible teacher. That's why I admire Nerina. We have a lot of new stuff to do together now. I patted Nefertiti, who didn't seem to be happy about it. Why the long face? Magic is fun. Humph. Human is bad. And she just keeps going. Her personality is getting weird lately. After convincing her for some time, she changed into the child form again, and I showed her around the lab. Here, Alina prepared some clothes for you. Clothes are annoying. Just put whatever you like on. You can't keep going around in that oversized black shirt of mine. Else she would kill people with just her cuteness. Until now, she only wore a black shirt of mine that was actually pretty much big for her. She, however, loved it very much and looked super cute in it. Her left shoulder was exposed and her arms were not even coming out from the sleeves. It was devilishly cute, I tell you. Before we leave the Moonblade clan, Alina acted all motherly and packed all her clothes which she wore when she was a child and told me to give them for Nefertiti. Such an action is indeed something a caring girl like Alina would do on her own. Eventually, Nefertiti chose a black dress. Nerina kicked me out so that she can dress Nefertiti on her own. I was a bit worried and refused to leave, but my secretary came in. The guest has arrived, boss. Oh, he is here. Who is here? Nerina asked. Master Alchemist Nerelian. Nerina raised her brows and blinked a few times. How did you manage to make someone like that come to visit you? Maybe by helping him achieve one of his life's great goals, then leave some question marks behind to attract his interest. Kid, you know what? I don't even want to know. A high elf master alchemist? His kind can be counted on the fingers of one hand. Nerina had too much on her mind already, so I left her. Still, I am the one who is going to deal with an ill-tempered high elf elderly and try to gain his favor. Chapter 201. Overwhelming with Science. As it seems that web novel is not contracting fanfics and this novel can't have a gift system and is a pain in the ass, I decided to go on with my PayPal. Just visit PayPal. me/Eldokmezi. Enjoy Redheart. Great Master Nerelian. It is nice to finally meet you in person. I am very sorry about yesterday and this morning. The Imperials were on my throat all the ti. Ho ho. Thanejon. No worries, no worries. No bother at all, haha. It gave me enough time to go around Windhelm and visit some old friends in the college, haha. And the high elf, who was stingy as hell in the game, is smiling ear to ear. I was a bit taken aback, but it seemed that my worries about his attitude were overestimated. Or he is in a really good mood. I looked at his apprentice that was smiling beside him and didn't feel anything suspicious. Please take a seat. As we all sat and a servant came to take the requests, Nerelian took out something from his bag. It was the white file. I have spent long years searching for this file, and seeing it being handed to me by Quintus here almost caused me a heart attack. I had to admit that I've been looking for a needle in a haystack, but, tell me, how exactly did you find it? Nerelian asked and narrowed his eyes at me. I knew he was going to ask this question. If I answered him saying I have found it in some sort of a book or something like that, he will know that I am lying. Team Zero reported that he asked some questions about me in the college regarding the field of my studies and what I am famed with. I know alchemy, and it is very simple, but I am not at the level that I can brag about myself at all. Nerina is not that good at alchemy herself, but we know the general tricks. The deep secrets, however, is not our game. Also, someone like Nerelian must have a direct connection with someone in the alchemy department in the college. These guys are relentless in their work, and the advanced books about alchemy are monitored closely by them, even inside the Arcaneum. My answer has to be careful. Well, let's start from the start. I was on one of my travels south of Winterhold long before anything gets established the way it is today. I was heading to the Night Gate village when a snowstorm came out of nowhere and forced me and my attendant to be lost in the mountains as the road was pretty much covered up. The next thing we knew, we were in front of an old barrow and some bandits aiming their arrows at us. It was a bloody fight in the storm. I almost lost my head to an arrow and my attendant got her thigh pierced. After a long struggle, we cleared out the bandits to find ourselves in a large and ancient Nordic ruin. After going deeper into the ruin, we found undead draugrs and strange traps. There were some rewards and we really struck it lucky, but as an adventurer, I didn't want to go out without finding out the secret of the ruin, and as I battled a powerful draugr, little did I know that what he protected was a storage room blocked by a really shrewd trick. To unlock the room, one needs a stable alchemical mixture that can only be made by a master alchemist. I had to record my thoughts and seal the place before I head back to Winterhold and ask about the best alchemist in Skyrim, and it was Master Nerelian. As I set my request for the said item, Master Nerelian provided me with the item, and I really was pleased with the results once I opened the secured room. What I found in there was a very old, a very ancient laboratory. I was enthralled with wonder and ordered no one to approach the place to not damage anything, but nothing there was to be damaged. All the materials I found was some old magical cauldrons that have lost their enchantments, and all the organic ingredients turned into dust when air started to move in the room. The only thing that felt of value in the room was a white broken bottle. Once I saw it, 2 words came to my mind: the white phial, the same name as Master Nerelian's shop. I then remembered the stories of the thing Master Nerelian was looking for and named his store after, just to make anyone with knowledge about this artifact notice the store. At that time, I knew what did I just discover. I sure talked a lot, but the look on Nerelian's face was worth it. He was getting moved every time I tried to make it dramatic and was smiling happily. Sigh. Elves are so simple. Thane John, this is wonderful. You have walked in the long-lost tomb of a legendary alchemist like Curelmil. I am envious, even though I understand the risk of making such an adventure. It would be a great source of inspiration for someone like myself to witness such a place. Alas, I am not that young anymore. Don't say that, Master Nerelian. Last time I asked Quintus about you. I heard you were having some health troubles, but seeing you now, you are healthier than most of the Altmare I know. The ones that I killed. I mean, ahaha. It is thanks to a series of lucky events that happened as of late, but we'll get to that later. Now, let me be a little bother you with some questions. Here it comes. Not at all, Master Nerelian. Please ask. Thank you. His face turned serious again. What made you think you should come to Quintus with the phial? Why not directly to me? I knew he was upset about that. Sigh. This is a matter of, how do I say this? I am not that old, so it is pretty much easy to read my mind. If I brought something valuable to my master and she found it broken, I would be given that bone-chilling glare. Well, 2 young men like me and Quintus can cover up the matter, and when I approached him, he told me that Master Nerelian would have a heart attack if he saw the white phial in such a state. To get at the problem solved, we had to fix the phial. Quintus knew the method. I had the ingredients. It all went well. Right, Quintus? Oh, right. Thane John. Nerelian stared at me for a while, then closed his eyes and nodded. Still, after you fixed the phial, you left it for me, even though you were the one who found it and it belongs to you by right. He stopped talking and looked at me with a piercing gaze. You left it for me because you found out something valuable, more valuable to you than the phial? Let me say this. I doubt that you have the ability to create the phial, as the reshaping process of the unmelting snow is very impossible. You and Quintus are actually very lucky to be able to fix the crack, and the phial appears to be patched. I couldn't believe it would work until I tested it myself. So as the crafting technique wasn't what you were after, then it must be the enchantment. I was sitting behind my desk listening to Nerelian's analysis. Once he finished, I rested my back to my chair and nodded with a smile. He continued. I knew it, but this is even more impossible than the crafting technique. It is greatly flawed, and when I tried to copy it, I destroyed containers I made them on. Even the best elven and dwemer metal couldn't stand the enchantment. I nodded and replied, let me guess, the metal started melting before your eyes? Exactly. That enchantment is overbearing. Sigh. It is the same problem I faced with the Magica reactor. Well, this is a part of the reason why Kirillmil used one of the coldest materials his hands could get on to stabilize the overheating flaw with a cold substance. Indeed, I agree with you. Still, to get your hands on an enchantment that can literally create something from nothing without having the right material to enchant it on is not really that useful, right? Excuse me for my curiousness and tell me, what exactly did you gain out of your unrewarded labor? Nerulian asked. Oh, a lot. A lot? Indeed. Also, creating something from nothing is, excuse my language, but it is very wrong. You completely don't understand the enchantments on the file. I said something a bit rude which made Quintus almost refute for his master, but Nerulian spoke fast. Wait, you said that the white file doesn't create something from nothing? And it is not just one enchantment? My reply was only a smile. It can't be. Nerulian's golden skin turned pale. No one would see a high elf go pale every day. I took out a red clean note from my desk and put it in front of Nerulian. Just that you know, this is not for free. I said that, and Nerulian's eye landed on the note. He knew that opening it means making a deal with the devil, but who cares? Even Shalater made a deal with Shiagarath for knowledge once. He took the note and opened it, then started reading. 20 minutes later, he lowered it down and looked with blank eyes to space. Thane, my master, is her all right? Just leave him to rest his mind for a while, Quintus. The insights of arch-physicist Albert Einstein with the explanations of the laws of conservation of matter and energy are really crazy to deal with. Applying them on magic doesn't make them any better. After all, I am the poor soul who used the system within him to resurface those unpleasant memories from high school and the documentaries I watched to apply that damned science stuff on magic. It is a nightmare, I tell you. A nightmare. Chapter 202, Recruiting a Master Alchemist. A big thanks to Ian Bell for support. Learn from his selfless example, damn it. When I looked at Nerulian and saw his hazy eyes, it reminded me with my state in high school for some reason. Einstein really ruined my brain at that period of my past life. Seeing his curse spreading around in another world by me made it feel so good. A few minutes later, Nerulian came to the world of the living again. This man, Grandmaster Albert Einstein, what era did he live in? How can a man such as him exist and this world doesn't even know about him? He can't be a man. Is he one of the old Dwemer we don't know of? He's got to be. Nerulian couldn't calm down until he was served some lemon tea. How do you think about the laws of conservation of both energy and matter? I asked. It changes everything. I know. The white file, it transforms magica to matter. It can do a very terrifying process, and just looking at it won't make anyone believe it. Oriel's light. Creating something from nothing is simply impossible after all. Of course, only a perfect being can do so. A god, for example. Gods are a word you humans use. I know, but if you look at things my way, you will see that even the Etiata can't create something from nothing. Only a being with a power, where science and logic lose to, is the perfect being capable of doing so. That's why we researchers don't ever go after what is perfect. Nerulian thought for a while and nodded. That's why you were sure that creating something from nothing is impossible, because it is perfectness. Exactly. Your words carry some wisdom, but you are going against what both men like Nords and Mare like High Elves believe in, by degrading the gods of men who are Edra and denying the elven Edra of perfectness. Hell, even the Daedra are no gods in your eyes. They simply may be powerful beings that all mortals hailed from, but a god should be much more almighty, not a being that can be trapped in a mortal plane, not a being whose heart can be torn out. But what does that make God if perfect is impossible to exist? Humans always say God this and God that, but the way you are looking at things, does God exist in your point of view? Here where I come with the so-called agenda, but don't really get bothered with the opinions. It is just me making this chapter longer with a topic I enjoy. This question went far and wide between many men of science and logic I heard of before. All of them knew that nothing is perfect and even abhorred it. They asked themselves of the true meaning of being perfect, and the answer was nothing. If something is truly perfect, then that's just it. The borders are formed. There is no room for advancing and learning further. A state of hopeless stillness and a dead end. That's why they always sought the better than, but never the perfect. This is how they advanced to prove themselves right or wrong and took the hard ways to reach the better answers. So perfection is an impossible concept and a taboo not to be pursued. And now to the question about God. Well, that depends on how you see science and logic. Will they be able to figure out what God is? If they can, then that is not a God. If they can't, then that being should be a God. That, of course, should be accompanied by a proof from God by an act of perfection known as a miracle. I won't say any more than that. Neurelian looked at me again and looked at the note I gave him, then sighed. My head will not take all of that in one day. I should go and study this note first, then come and have more talks with you. Haha. You are welcome anytime, Master Neurelian. The talk with Neurelian was something really enjoyable from that moment onward. We kept competing with a lot of theories in magic and natural laws to the point we were equally tired. I wasn't the brightest student back in the days, but with a system digging my memories on its own, I could study things I never did seriously in my past life. Knowledge supporting magic is one of my strength points, and it is really enjoyable to apply both on each other. Just one last question. What are you applying that enchantment from the white phial on? Not before you tell me what you used it for. Oh, I used it to reproduce a rare solvent of alchemy I acquired from my master. It is called Lorcan's Tears, and its rarity is superior to any other solvent. It has the ability to create potions with 0% chance of failure and a high quality too, unless the person is a hopeless fool. And it also is the reason why I am back to full health. Oh, congratulations on your recovery. But damn, that solvent is too overpowered. Lorcan's tears are not really the tears of Lorcan. It is just something so hard to come by that it was named after Lorcan, who mocked his enemies even after they killed him. Lorcan Tears is a solvent known to be purer than famous alchemy products like Stardew and Cloud Mist. It is really hard to come by, and mass-producing it with the white phial is really cheating. What about you? Neurelian asked. Oh, I am creating a device that is a bit simpler than the white phial. I call it the Magicar Reactor. I got inspired by another device called the Arc Reactor, made by the arch-engineer Tony Stark, but I am not going to put it on my chest and power up a piece of armor with it. I can do that though. Oh, it is a bit hard to understand, but it sounds great. Thank you. Neurelian and I hit it good. We are now buddies. At that moment, my best buddy showed up. Hey, John. I have collected it all, the malachite, the moonstone, and the quicksilver. Wolfer was carrying a big crate over his shoulder while saying so. What else do you need? A really strong fire. Drag Johnrad out here. He is the best fire mage we know of. We also need someone to watch over the process, in case if something went wrong. I'll be that person. Last thing we need is a strong acid, the most damnable acid on Nirn, and a lot of soul gems. I'll figure something out. At that moment, Neurelian jumped from his seat. You are crafting mithril, right? I looked at him and sighed. Of course he would figure it out. Mithril does exist in this world, and it is very rare and comes with many secret recipes. The most common ingredients are the ones Wolfer came with just now. It is not the complete thing, and some parts in the experiment need a lot of rechecking, but I am willing to start it now. Mithril is canon in the lore. Even though it only appeared in the Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion, it was very underrated in my opinion. I am taking the more fantasy approach to the mithril my way. Still, Neurelian may be able to help. Yes, this mithril will be for the finest lady in Skyrim, so no sharing. Haha, don't worry. But I am your best hope if you want a strong acid. I can make a special mixture that you will not ever see or hear of from anyone but me. I looked at the note I gave him and smiled. That's not enough, you know. Haha, how wicked. Don't worry, I am planning to move to Winterhold from now on. Nothing ties me to Windhelm anyway. His answer was like chirps to my ears. I wanted to go and hug him, but I restrained myself. So, Big Bad Ulfric is going to miss his favorite Altmare. Haha, I bet he will. Now with the most famed alchemist in Windhelm joining forces with me, my life is getting much more easier. I will make sure to prepare the best house in town for Master Nerelian and Quintus. There will be a shop and laboratory with every and anything you may want. One of my men will deliver the title deed in an hour. Thank you, thank you. Nerelian and I kept exchanging words of compliments until he left. I couldn't help myself but to make a victory pose. Now Winterhold is backed by a high elf master alchemist. Wolf, my man, let's go make some mithril. Chapter 203, Mask of the Firekeeper. It has been 3 days since Johnrad and Wolfer shut themselves in the laboratory with orders to send only 3 meals each day. Some said that the snow around the building all melted away after a few strong waves of heat started to come every once in a while. Also, strong thuds were heard in the past 3 days. The news was not really the hottest topic in town, as the new alchemist in town attracted a lot of attention as the well-known Whitefile alchemy store from Windhelm opened at Winterhold. The Dare Dragon Company people established a big store for the famous master of the shop, and an imperial called Quintus was the central figure of the shop, as it seemed that Master Nerelian was busy with some research. The alchemy store, however, provided a long-lost service that Winterhold hasn't seen since a very long time, and all the residents went to see the new commodities. With all the noise around the lively town, the most notable villa in town, the Sea Mist Manor was having it peaceful. A lot of beauties were living in this house as it got expanded by another floor and some more rooms. It was now much larger than the estate John had in mind. In the basement, the new lady of the house, Selena, was having a bath in the large stone tub with Nurina, as the latter was trying to figure out a way to suppress the immense power of Alina's eye with her magic. This is really strong. I could suppress it with just my magicka, but I will run dry in no time at this rate. Nurina analyzed Alina's eye power with a magicometer in her hand, trying to block Alina's power with her magicka. I understand, Master. It is okay. I am not really sad about it or anything, Alina said as she returned the blindfold back to where it was. Nurina could tell that Alina was really depressed for the fact that she has to keep her eyes closed all the time. Even though she went through a rough childhood because of her different eyes, it all started to make her suffer once again. Nurina sighed and pulled Alina to her side and kept embarrassing her. Don't worry, my son will figure something out. Alina, who was a bit tense for the sudden hug, eased a bit and put her head on Nurina's shoulder. I know, Mother. Nurina made a prideful smile as she was called the way she liked and kept caressing Alina's hair. Outside the house in the front yard, there was no snow in the area as 4 women present, and their strong presence melted away the snow long ago. 2 of these women were having a spar, and the other 2 were watching while taking care of some big animals on the side. Yeah, take this, Jeliner shouted as she gave her best combo of punches. Seriously, is that all what you have? Hilda was toying with Joel and blocked her attacks with ease. It is far from over. Come at me. Joel's move resembled John's a lot. Her legs were flying around carrying waves upon waves of attacks enforced by her gray battle spirit, aura. Yet Hilda simply took it all down with her standard golden aura and her fast reactions. With a fast counterattack, Joel was sent back flying with her face in the dirt. Not bad. Want to go again? It is not done yet. Hee hee, stupid girl. I would have eaten you alive if John doesn't like you. Hilda was still going to teach Joel a lesson in combat, but it seemed that both the style and the level of power were way above Joel. Aunt, let her have a suitable weapon. Yes, it is hopeless if she keeps fighting that way. Jorna and Brenda, who were taking care of the big beasts of the firemen's, commented on the spar between Hilda and Joel. They could tell that Joel was having a hard time in close-quarters combat, which didn't seem to be her area of expertise. Hilda was toying with her left and right, and Joel looked really pitiful. Fine, girl, pick a melee weapon. With Hilda's words, Joel stood up and walked for the weapon rack on the side. John has left a ton of weapons to train with here. Joel took a dagger and faced Hilda. Are you stupid, girl? Hilda bashed Joel's head. Hey, why is that? What would a tiny thing like that do? Pick something big. Joel was comfortable with knives, but the idea of using a big weapon wasn't even something she would think of. Her build was simply not suitable for big weapons. Tisk, take this. Hilda took a spear and gave it to Joel. Big weapons shouldn't be heavy. Still, they all have a better reach. Fine. Joel took the spear and tried to get the right way to grip it based on how she saw John do it. Hey girl, get some real notes from her. She is not called the most complete fighter for nothing. Learn all what you can learn. Brenda called for Joel. The most complete fighter was the style which Hilda was known for. She indeed preferred big weapons, but her skill proved that she is the best all-rounder in the clan. Her speed, strength, reaction, and all other aspects were terrifyingly accurate as her only talent was fighting. A lot of people wanted to learn from her, but few like Brenda and John were lucky enough to get her guidance. Now it was Joel's turn. Now, girl, show me something good. The spar got ignited once again and Joel's talent was starting to bloom as a spear wielder. John couldn't really determine which weapon was the best for Joel due to her style of fighting, but Hilda figured it out in an instant. Joel was now carrying a spear and a buckler was tied to her left. Her stance was low and she was moving around and striking with strong frontal attacks while dashing ahead and jumping backward. If she would get closer, she would switch to a short blade to get the perfect pin on her opponent. Hilda also tested Joel's archery and was really impressed by her movements. A strange style of a strong yet a very light fighter with the ability of archery was the perfect way to describe Joel's new training style. She kept sparring like that with Hilda for 3 days. Hilda wouldn't really think of a proper name to Joel's style, but when John sees it, he will think of one style, the Amazon. Good work for today. Hilda offered a hand to the all-beaten-up Joel on the ground. Thanks for the guidance. Joel stood up while leaning on the training spear. Hilda shook her head, then held Joel like a small cat from her clothes. I'll take you in. With a bewildered face, Joel got carried into the house on Hilda's arm. A minute later, the two arrived at the stone bathtub in the basement where Alina and Nerina are. Hilda put Joel down slowly, then undressed in second and jumped into the tub. Seriously, how old are you? 9? Nerina, who was relaxing and got splashed away, grumbled at Hilda. Just give me that. Hilda snatched the red wine bottle from Nerina and sat beside her. The two started to have a drinking contest and Joel slid beside Alina. Rough training? Alina asked. Yeah. Come closer. Joel got closer to Alina and the later hugged her closer, then cast some healing spells all over Joel's body. Keep doing it. It feels so good. The harmonious mood was still going around until a fifth person appeared in the bathtub room. A little girl in a black robe disregarded all the gazes on her and jumped beside Alina. Nefertiti, did you deliver the food? Yes. How are they doing? Busy. Did they tell you when will they come out? Nefertiti shook her shoulders. Alina sighed and didn't say anything more. John has been absent from home for 3 days. She was the one running the company in his absence as the newly recognized Lady of Housedare. Life was good, but she was worried about John. The only thing she knew was that Johnrad and Wolfer are crafting some artifacts from a very rare alloy that required a lot of patience and power. Wolfer's level as a blacksmith seemed to be going through a serious upgrade during this process, and both John father and son were helping him. Jorna could get from Wolfer that they are crafting a piece of accessory that power is going to be very powerful to help Alina control her eye powers, and according to Wolfer, the beauty of that piece is going to be a master-level piece of art that the world has rarely seen any like too. Just as she finished recalling that, Jorna came through the door with a wide smile on her face. They are out. With that said, even Nerina jumped up as fast as she could and went to see what these pieces of art turned out to be. All the ladies in the bathtub went up in a second, leaving the blindfolded Alina behind. Sigh, they really did it, huh? Alina didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she loosened the blindfold and went out gracefully, then wiped the water with magic and dried her hair. A few minutes later, she walked out while wearing a gorgeous white dress that exposed her cleavage and shoulders, which she later covered with a shawl. Upon her taking the steps up to the upper level, she was met with only John. "I came to take you," he said as he approached her. She extended her hand to him, which he took and kissed. "Take me then." "Okay. Open your eyes. No one is around." Alina slowly opened her eyes to see John, who looked a bit roughed up after 3 days of constant working. He pulled her closer and kissed her on her lips with a lot of longing and passion. She didn't offer any resistance and even pulled him closer. "Sorry, I stink," John said as he realized that he didn't bathe in 3 days. "Do you? You taste just right, though." Alina was pressing closely on John, who was looking at her gently. This gentle look in his eyes was something he only showed to his loved ones. Alina was one of his family, and she always got the gentlest of his looks. "Want to see what I made?" But let us stay like this for a while." Alina was smiling playfully as she wanted to make the ladies who went before her wait longer. John didn't mind if he would make the world wait for some time alone with Alina, but someone came to bust them. "Playing again without me?" Joel seemed a big upset and clung to John. Alina closed her eyes to not harm Joel and directed her face down with a shy smile. She was a shy girl around anyone but never minded anything with John. He was already a lot to her. "Do you want to play with us too?" Alina grinned at Joel. "What? Am I allowed to?" Joel replied playfully and squeezed herself between John and Alina while facing Alina. She then approached Alina playfully and seemed to be going to kiss her. Alina's face blushed, but John was already dragging Joel away from her ears. "Don't tease her." "What? She invited me personally. She likes to get teased, ouch ouch." "Okay." John was having the 2 girls on his left and right while holding them close. The 3 were wasting time together until Nurina called at them with a stern tone. They went out with an apologetic and awkward look on their faces. John led the other 2 to the large table of the dining room. There a few things were being covered under some white clothes, and everyone was gathered around the table. "All right, everyone. We created quite a few stuff with the mithril we could cook. I don't know how it was done or if we were lucky or not, but it is mostly a joint effort," Wolfer said as he started pointed as the things on the table. "As agreed, I will do the presentations," Wolfer said and started removing some clothes on the smallest pieces. "These are the Heart of the Sea series, forged by me and Mr. Johnrad, and enchanted by John." The Heart of the Sea series were 3 very gorgeous-looking necklaces that were forged by a platinum-like metal that had a bit of golden gleam to it. As the necklaces seemed really thin and delicate, they carried 3 blue gemstones that were shaped like a water drop and were surrounded by an artistic cage of mithril that gave the gemstones a sacred aura and a beauty over their beauty. "This one is for you, Bjorna." Wolfer presented the one that was on a black stone display to Bjorna. "For me." Bjorna's eyes almost fell from their sockets as she saw the beauty of the necklace she was being gifted by Wolfer. This thing was literally the most precious piece of accessory that she ever saw in her life. Why not? Mithril itself was metal from legends that wasn't known if it was made as an alloy or had its own or in nature, but Wolfer said it was an alloy that required some freakishly rare substances. John had the highest understanding of the mithril as Shadow has told him a way to create it. Even though it was impossible to get, one of the components to create it was a dragon's blood, which John had no problem in acquiring at all. He himself was a walking 7 liters of dragon blood. Anyway, Wolfer walked behind Bjorna and put the necklace on her with the cheers and winks of all the people attending the event. The second necklace was presented to Hilda by Johnrad, which was rather getting romantical except for John's chilly glare that made Johnrad want to cuss at him. And finally, the last necklace was for Nurina, which was gifted by John. "This is an interesting enchantment." Nurina read through the enchantment right away. "Like it? It is great. I love it." The enchantment was indeed powerful, as John described it as an all-sort protection enchantment, which would shield the wearer from all harm once the gem is charged. Once the gem is activated, it would become red and its power will be something to behold. Of course, only a high-grade material can withstand a highly advanced enchantment. When John crafted it, He was enjoying to his heart's content as enchanting on Mithril was totally unhindered by no law. It felt like he can make a godly artifact if he wanted to. Still, Joel was starting at John as if saying, I better get something good or else. And now, for these two big pieces of awesome. First, Joel is known for her reckless style and hates to put a helm on her head. That is why we made this. John called it Crown of the Valkyrie. Wulfur announced and removed the cloth from the first piece to show a strange circlet with wings over its sides. It greatly resembled the Valkyrie helmets from the Norse mythology, as it had the same winged pieces to the side and protected the forehead splendidly. It didn't cover the whole head, which made it very light. John carried it and stood in front of the bewildered Joel. This is way more expensive than my head itself. She thought so. Hilda helped John to hold Joel's hair to the back, and John fixed it on Joel's face. The color of the mithril overlapped with her ashen gray skin and made her skin give more luster and glossiness. Now, Joel's skin was akin to mithril itself. The enchantment on this crown was very bizarre. John said that he used the largest soul gem he had to make this strong enchantment. John himself was in wonder of how good he made this piece. Joel broke into tears and hugged John tightly until Hilda dragged her by force. The last piece. This beast? Wulfur revealed the last artifact crafted by them. Another crown? Nerina asked. It indeed looked like a crown. No a warrior crown like Joel's, but an actually big crown. Its appearance was different in style to the delicate things created before, and the amount of mithril in it seemed to be more than 3 times the necklaces and the crown of the Valkyrie combined. It is a mask, John said. The people around looked at it and imagined if such a thing was indeed a mask. It looked like a circlet but was wide and big. Its design was somewhat high-elven but seemed far thicker and sturdier. The feeling of the magic it gave off was different from the other pieces, as it didn't give any peaceful or a tranquil aura. It only emitted power, lots and lots of overbearing power. John carried it and went in front of Alina. Here it is. It was made from the regular components of mithril and a dragon's blood. It was enchanted by no soul gem, but by a heart stone that contains the power of Shor. This is the mask that can be used to shield you and destroy your enemies at the same time, John said as he put the mask on Alina's face. He put it on her face, and it fitted her like nothing else, as if it was made for her from a long time ago. Even though it hid the top half of her beautiful face, it added to her beauty even more. Open your eyes, Alina. With John's words, Alina opened her eyes. The mask made a strong pulse of power, as if it was being awakened from an old slumber. Its power was felt by all, and everyone stepped back except John. What a power! Even Johnrad and Nerina were scared. The mask resonated with Alina too well, as if it was singing for the long-awaited return of its owner. Alina touched the mask, and it calmed down immediately. John couldn't help but smile. What did you call this, John? She asked. Sadly, it had a name before I recreate it, so we will stick with the original. He smiled and continued. Mask of the Firekeeper. Chapter 204, The Glorious Threesome, plus 18. A big shout for Boglet Adrian Mircha, Dark Priest, the first to gift on PayPal. Also, there is a chapter after this. Late at night, everyone went to bed and John snuck to the bathtub in the basement. This place is literally a piece from heaven. The water heater, the soap, and everything else was just there waiting for me to have an epic bath. Still, John was accompanied with Joel, who was too excited to sleep. She was holding the crown in her hand and looking at it with all the love in the world. You like it that much? John asked. You're kidding? It is the best thing in my world, after you, of course, and Alina. John smiled to her answer and leaned closer to her. How much do you love me? Joel paused for a while, then looked at John and held his head with her small hands. You are the world to me. What is my life if you are not in it? Remember when you told me that I am your thing? That day I stopped living for myself and started living for you. Even the voices, they are all about you now. You are more than what you can ever think to me. Joel's words were said in her crazy, enchanting tone that she only reveals to John, her other face and maddened personality that only he gets to see. He just looked to her and didn't resist the urge to pull her closer to himself. His head was on her decent chest as he pressed on it further to feel her warmth and get some peace of mind. She, who knows when he is tired and seeks some peace, hugged him tightly to herself and started humming for him. John always loved her voice and listened to her song most of the time. The two mad couple kept this state, sitting together naked in the warm water until a presence revealed itself. The two of them recognized the presence and smiled faintly, not even moving an inch away from each other. The door to the bathtub opened and a girl with an artistic mask on her eyes walked in. Alina knew that John and Joel have sneaked in here together and didn't resist the urge to come and check on them. She looked at their position and paused for a while. Both were stuck to each other and closing their eyes peacefully while Joel was humming. Alina knew she was going to see an intimate scene, but she had the least intimate experience when it comes to John's women. She knew about his outside relationships and didn't really get it when Joel told her that one woman may get broken if she tried to satisfy John all by herself, so Alina never got ahead of herself. Now, after she returned from her clan and was officially the lady of the house, she wanted a share of John too, part of the reason she became so open with him. Once she saw him with Joel, however, she became confused. How do I advance? She thought. Lucky for her, neither John nor Joel were the patient type when it comes to lovemaking. Joel opened her eyes and nodded for Alina to approach. While keeping her black robe on her, Alina went into the tub and walked to Joel. She saw how John was being hugged and wanted to have that too. She looked to Joel, and the latter offered her a hand. Sit on the other lap. Alina got confused, but she noticed that with John's height, she would indeed need to be on his lap. The problem is, she could detect that Joel was sitting on, but there were two more laps. She couldn't see past the soapy water, but she noticed that Joel and John were silently dying from laughter. That's when the light of understanding shone upon her. Really? How is that? I am. Alina realized that she had underestimated John yet one more time. There was a secret to his golden hand after all, and it seemed to be something outside of the normal league she heard of. John had to pull her on his lap himself, and without moving his head from Joel's chest, Joel took the initiative and splashed some water on Alina's upper body, making her clothes soaked wet. That started to outline Alina's amazing figure under the clothes. Joel was familiar with Alina's naked figure. She knew that this girl is another story when her clothes are removed, but she kept the fact from John to see his reaction. With her clothes wet, Alina was losing trying to figure out how to lose the sense of shame around John, even more tried to loosen the nape of her robe. That was when Joel pulled her suddenly at John and Alina's breasts pressed on John's head from the other side, while making a silly voice. Joel smiled at Alina and looked to her in the eyes. The mask of the firekeeper didn't hide Alina's eyes, so they were visible but under control. Seeing the look in her eyes, Joel held Alina's head and pulled her closer to herself, then took Alina's lips with her lips and went into a deep state of mind-blanked kissing. John, however, was experiencing something new. He never knew that Alina's breasts were this heavenly. The first word that came to his mind was marshmallow. As he was getting used to the feeling, he could feel that heartbeats of the girls rising. He inspected the situation up there and saw Alina corresponding passionately with Joel. "That's hot," he said. He leaned to the back and watched one of the best shows of his fantasies being applied in real life. His two girlfriends were hitting it together too. Okay, playtime is over. John carried the two girls each in hand and went out of the bathtub, setting his destination to the main bedroom. John threw the girls on the bed, and they were still squirming around each other. As he leaned on them, his shadow covered them and both turned to him. "Tonight is Alina's," Joel said. "Why not?" John agreed. He then lied beside Alina and looked at Joel, who was on her other side. The two nodded at each other, and they sandwiched Alina from both sides. With a lot of experience under their belts, Alina, who is a complete virgin, got pulverized by two horny mad people. John and Alina entered a heated state of kissing, and John didn't stop fondling her breasts. Joel slid down between Alina's legs and found Alina's forbidden area. She smiled and stuck her face to Alina's vagina that was in a heated state after she was being played by John and Joel the whole past hour. Alina kept moaning from John's and Joel's play until she started losing the sense of her surrounding. John wasn't going hard on her and let her have her own pleasure without going full-on action until Joel decided to switch. "Get down here." She pulled Alina beside her, and John was now sitting on the bed with the two between his legs. Joel held John's dick and put it in front of Alina's face, who paused for a second. She is now the closest she could get to little John that was fully awakened. "We do it like this." Joel started teaching Alina her fellatio technique in front of the grinning John. He just sat and relaxed, enjoying the show of his lovers serving him for the first time. Alina was a bit competitive and didn't want to lose to Joel, so she threw all the shyness away and joined the glorious fellatio. Both were competing, and luckily, John's dick was more than enough for two girls to play with. John was resisting the urge to flip the two girls around and start nailing them, but it was drawing closer any time now. John wouldn't go out on both Alina or Joel, unlike how he did it with Vittoria, who he destroyed completely to brand her as his own bitch, or how he does it with Alishka, who was his personal sex guide. To him, Joel and Alina shouldn't be messed up that hard, or as he would feel guilty about it. In the end, he flipped them over on each other and went on Alina first. "Here I go, princess." John aimed the tip of his dick on Alina's pussy and went in. Alina made a struggling voice, but Joel was hugging her and fondling her breasts. Alina's pain was overtaken by pleasure, and John could go in. He stayed still for a few seconds inside Alina until her inside got used to the intruder, then he started to move. Alina was screaming from pleasure with every time John moved. John himself was about to lose his mind a few times to her seductive moans and crazy jiggling body, so he chose to kiss her a few times, but he found himself being hugged by her arms and legs. Then he got pulled closer and closer. "Careful, careful." John didn't really want to harm Alina, but she didn't seem to mind it at all. Actually, his actions begged him to go harder. He also was impressed by how deep he could get in her. It was still not that much, but he liked it so much already. "All right, you asked for it." John hugged Alina back and sat with her facing. She started to slide down on his dick while breathing roughly, but suddenly, she pushed him back and rode atop of him. Relentless. "I like." John liked where this was going and started to watch Alina going up and down on her own. Joel joined in and stuck her back to Alina, helping her to go up and down. Words of pleasure escaped from Alina's mouth and squirted once and twice, but seemed to be still going. John nodded to her durability and decided to not be polite anymore. He moved his thighs, and she started bouncing up and down with him until he cummed inside her. She also squirted at the same time as him and let herself lie on his body. John hugged her warmly, but Joel was already taking her turn too. She leaned forward and started kissing both Alina and Joel. John didn't seem to be tired at all and started playing with Joel. She was very horny and squirted more than Alina. The girls were too strong compared to all the other girls John slept with before. They recovered in an instant and wanted to go on again and again. That night, John could admit that he finally found the pair that could put him down in terms of sex on their own. Chapter 205, The Haven Cube Unlocked. The second release sounds a bit dirty after the last chapter. The next day, John woke up with two naked girls on his left and right. The room was still warm and the magic in it was still flowing through it. John was still tired from all the night activity he went through and started drinking a whole keg of water on his own. He then looked at the two sleeping beauties and smiled. His two future wives are just the best in his eyes. Getting this lucky in this life feels way too good. He had everything he wished for, the power, the money, the girls. He knew he finally made a full life, but he understood that this is far from over. His achievements were not a thing his enemies wanted for him to keep. The report that got delivered to him this morning was the best reminder to him. Last night, a high elf tried to infiltrate into the Dare Dragon Company building and managed to reach the secure door of the laboratory. If not for the complicated magic lock on the door, the infiltrator would have broken into one of the most top-secret facilities in Winterhold. John was a bit angry, but he knew what that elf was after. He dressed right in a second and went to the Dare Dragon mercenary barracks in the east. "Fill me in," John asked his housecarl Trudvar. An annoying fellow, acting all arrogant and mighty even after getting caught. Typical high elf. What else? "We found that on him." Trudvar handed John a magic scroll. The scroll was still sealed, as it was a common sense not to open a none-appraised magic scroll. John checked the magic scroll for an instant and clicked his tongue. TSK. A dispelling magic scroll, a very high grade. This scroll was a very simple but dangerous one. If the intruder used it on the laboratory's door, most of the magic rune would have been removed. Luckily, John had that door enchanted to reconstruct the magic rune on its own and initiate a lockdown if it was opened the wrong way. "Show me to the elf." John followed Trudvar to the underground cell under the barracks, and there he could see an elf with an arrogant look on his face. John didn't say anything and simply stepped into the cell. "You are the Thane of Winterhold, good. Your filthy men dared to lay a finger on me? If I am not released this very second, you can't blame me for not. Arg." John simply punched the high elf. He looked with cold eyes to the prisoner and smiled. So the Thalmor decided to move in such a time? What a shitty day. John walked to the high elf lying on the ground and stepped on his face while looking down on him. "I'll kill you. I'll kill you." The high elf couldn't take the humiliation of being stepped on by a human and tried to react. John didn't give him time to do so and went down on the elf with all sorts of kicks and insults. "Bring the torturer here. I want him to have it hard." Trudvar nodded and went away for a second, then returned with a fat Redguard man carrying a small bag. Thane John, you finally have work for me. I am very pleased, huh? Richie, you sick bastard. I never thought for a day that I would ask for your help." Richie was the warden of Winterhold former prison, the Chill, and was also the executioner and the torturer. He was a short and a fat man with a sickening attitude. John didn't like that man one bit and kept him away, but Richie was always begging for John to use him as a warden or an executioner. With Richie's bad reputation, John preferred to keep him away, but he knew that he would need him one day, so he kept him close. The sickening tales about Richie were still vivid in the memories of some people in Winterhold, so John knew that this guy was sickeningly capable, and that was the time. "Make that elf sing All That I Need to Know." "Ha ha ha ha, Thane John, you only need to ask and Richie will deliver. Finally I can get a job too, ha ha ha, and an altmare at that." What a day. What a day. John left the high elf to Richie and went back to the company's building. Deep in his laboratory, John was sitting on a stool while playing with the Dwemer Haven cube in his hand. He was able to figure out the activation rune, but he understood that it needed a form of registration to make the cube recognize him as the owner of itself. Nefertiti was coming and going in her cat mode while playing with a rubber ball John made for her. She was supposed to be trained on shadow magic, but she was super bored from studying. John was bored too after failing to open the Dwemer Haven cube. He thought he was getting close, but each time he creates the magical rune he thinks is right, he finds something missing. At that time, he looked at Nefertiti, who was wholly given over to playing with the ball, and noticed something strange. The ball was clearly out of Nefertiti's reach, but suddenly, some strange black extensions came out from her paw and redirected the ball. Huh. John stood up and walked to Nefertiti. "Come here, girl." John caught the ball and Nefertiti came towards him. He held the ball up away from her and started waving it. "Now catch it. Human, give back you meanie." Nefertiti tried to catch the ball a few times until she did that thing again. John could see her claw extending and becoming longer while trying to catch the ball. He quickly caught her paw and checked it thoroughly. "What is that?" he asked. Nefertiti looked at her paw and tilted her head cutely. "Try to maintain it." John gave some of his magicka to Nefertiti, and her shadow claws became stronger and more visible. "That's some cool shadow magic," John exclaimed. "Shadow magic, Naya?" Nefertiti wondered. John nodded with a wide grin. "Yikes. Shut up. Magic is awesome. Keep training on that move and I will give you a dried fish." "Naya, Meow hates shadow magic." "Really, you will get more fish, you know?" A big fish with a dripping oily fat and a big bowl of milk. 2 fish. You little fine, but you will only get an extra fish if you show a new trick. Deal? Deal. Nefertiti was striking a new deal with John, who sat with a wide grin after finally convincing her to practice the shadow magic. By the way, how did you come up with that? Shadow Claw's trick? John asked. Don't know. Meow just wanted to reach it. John started thinking about what Nefertiti said of just wanted to do it and reached his hand to the Dwemer Haven cube. With the simplest magic rune, he unlocked the cube with the intention of just wanting to go into it and he is in. Holy freaking moly. This place rocks. It was like a large cubic Dwemer-style stone room with faint lighting and a strange smell. It was simply very empty and very cold. Damn, this place needs a room. With just an idea in his head, 2 walls started being formed in the cube as they seemed to be there all along. They left a small gap between them to be the room's entrance. I see now, so this cube has that function too. John looked at the cube in his hand with a smile until he realized what was wrong. Why is it in my hand? John wondered about it for a while, then he felt like he wanted to go back to the laboratory right away. Applying the same way he entered, John found himself out once again with the cube still in his hand. He didn't understand what just happened, but it didn't seem to be that dangerous to go in the cube. It also seemed that there is another version from the cube in the cube that acts as the control panel to the interior of the cube to the cube, while the real cube is not really in the cube. How cubic, John thought to himself. John then aimed the cube at some scrap pieces of metal in the corner, and it all got sucked in by the cube. John was impressed by the cube and decided to look into it while not going in. He tried to change the magical runes, and it really was possible. He only closed his eyes and the scrap pieces of metal could be seen inside the cube. He aimed the cube to the outside once again and let the scrap pieces out. The next trial was Nefertiti. John aimed the cube at her, and she got sucked in. Human, me and E? John could hear after he checked the inside of the cube. Nothing wrong there. My ball is not here. Here you go. Humph. Now make Meow a small house. The silly cat started bossing John around, so he kicked her out of the cube. Okay, now I want you to focus. Tell me what will happen. John entered the cube physically, then went out again. He then looked at Nefertiti and asked. Human went poof, then came again with no fish. TSK, what about the cube? Cube went poof, but it was still around. Meow could feel it. I see. John analyzed it based on Nefertiti's extraordinary sensing ability that the cube keeps itself in another frequency of reality when the user is in. No wonder I could tell what's on the outside too. John thought about it and arrived at the fact that the cube is already an overpowered artifact. Okay, come here. John held Nefertiti up and made her control the cube, then told her how to use it. According to what he knows, Nefertiti could copy some of his powers and his magical fingerprint too. She was very connected to him by soul, and she can even use Magicka from his Magicka pool like an extension to him. And now, she could use the unique artifact that only recognized him as its owner. Nefertiti managed to store things in the cube and get things out of it too. If someone other than my cutie can do that, I would have shouted them to pieces, John said and hugged Nefertiti intimately. He was really pleased that her connection with him was growing stronger day by day. It was a blessing any cat lover would kill for. John held the cube and looked at it with a grin. He was happy to have such a convenient tool, even so its appearance was very attractive and was hard to be hid. Unless? John tried to check more of the mysteries about the cube, and as if it was answering its master saying, "You are right." John's order to the cube to change its appearance was answered right away. The cube took another form and turned into a ring, then a necklace, then circlet. This thing has endless potential. I bet Lord FYR was grinding his teeth when I took it. No, he wasn't, and it was true that the cube has a lot of potential with the feature John unlocked so far. Human, someone coming, Nefertiti said. John made the cube into a ring and decided to call it the Haven Ring from now on, then turned to open the lab's door. It was Trudvar who was about to knock the door. Oh, boss. Report. The elf talk. John nodded and turned around to pick up his coat and told Nefertiti to follow. In the Dare Dragon mercenary barracks, John was sitting on a chair with John in his hand. Opposite to him, a high elf knelt on his knees with a pale face and some horrified expressions. Fatty Richie was smiling and acting all proud in front of John as if bragging about his work. From the report, it seemed that the Thalmor wanted to know what does the Firemen's and the Dare Dragon Company are planning for the summer raid on Japhet's Folly. For some reason, you guys are interested in it. Don't you know why? John asked. The elf shook his head in fear right away. This level of cooperation was indeed something. John never would have thought that a high elf, let alone a Thalmor, would be this timid in front of a human. Just what the hell did you do? John looked at Fatty Richie in wonder. There was not a single trace of blood from the elf. Richie seemed to be taken aback and put his bag down. If Thane John is interested, I will demonstrate once again. Richie took out a few leather strips, a skin tube, some smooth poles, and a lot of weird stuff. You know what? I don't even want to know. John had a few ideas about how their toys were used and didn't want any confirmation. He paid Richie and promised to make his job a full-time one if he kept quiet about it. John went out and Trudvar followed him. Go wake up the Firemans, Ongium and Jal. Tell them we are raiding some close Thalmor hideout. Yes, boss. John decided to go to Wulfr's house and wake him up, then go to his house and take the beauties with him too. Still, while he was walking, he started thinking of Japhet's Folly and its riches. He then looked at the Haven ring in his left and to Nefertiti that was carried on his right. He looked left and right, left and right, left and right, then he smiled. A devilish idea just came to his mind. Chapter 206, Against the Thalmor, 1. It was still the morning. The sun has barely dyed the sky with its light, and those who had early jobs were barely just waking up. I, however, was going around the streets in the morning to check on things. I may not sound like a caring ruler as I mostly leave the secondary matters to the management department in the company, but I somehow care about the town in my own way. For example, this morning I found a damaged part of the road that no one seemed to be going to fix. I had to highlight that place for the employees that are responsible for fixing the roads. Also, a house was badly damaged due to a storm and the residences were too poor to handle the repairs. Here where I had to come in. Don't get me wrong, this is not me showing off my charitable heart. This is basically a part of my job description as the holder of the title of a Thane, and I take my job very seriously. With my morning patrol/warm-up complete, I took my way to wake up the sleepy heads. Wulfr's house was on the opposite side of mine, and it was smaller as Wulfr himself didn't the hard-to-clean places, even though I offered him to have some servants, but Wulf values privacy. In front of his door, I knocked on with a style. Knock, no knock, knock, knock. Strangely, he wasn't awake yet. A few seconds later, I heard some movements from inside. Normally, Wulfr's place is like my place, so I opened the door anyway. Hey, Wulf, I am coming in. Just as my head went in, a strangely familiar-looking fist was thrown to my direction. Too late to avoid it anyway. Hey, you didn't have to punish him. A voice spoke, a feminine one. Sorry, I was nervous. That dumb voice is Wulfr. That punch, I'd recognize it anywhere. It's Wulf's punch. Still, why does it hurt like this? I opened my eyes and understood the situation immediately. Sigh, kids. In front of me, Wulfr and Bjorna were hanging their heads down. So, you guys slept together? They both nodded. It seemed that Bjorna spent the night at Wulfr's place. Okay, I understand you guys are shy about it. I also understand that you don't want anyone to know. They both nodded. Fine. Still, what I don't understand is why I got punched. They both looked at each other and seemed a bit awkward. Sorry, man. You know, Wulf loves his privacy. Wulfr spoke in a third-person style. I won't forgive you even if you speak like a Khajiit. PSK, that didn't work. I let out a sigh because of this guy's insolent behavior. Okay, Bjorna, can you go and wake Alina and Jul up? Yes, right away. she said and went out running. I watched her going out, then looked at Wolfer and winked at him. He foolishly smiled like an idiot. An opening. Asterisk swoosh. Star. I kicked his guts when he didn't expect at all. Arg. Why? Payback, bitch. The morning was a bit peaceful, so I took the chance to fool around with Wolf for a bit, then went to the company and geared up together. Wolfer was trying a new warhammer today, and its weight was something to behold. What did you made that from? Steel. Steel and more steel. I love it. Don't you feel like you need a new weapon? Your saber and hammer are really getting outdated. Now that you mention it, I only have that powerful staff we acquired from Vermina and Quagmire and my traveling armor that I acquired from Herson. Let me think if I know about some good artifact hiding here or there. Fine. Just saying if you want anything custom forged. Nope. The forging is not my current problem. I need some good enchanted gear. To tell the truth, I really need a serious upgrade to my gear. Savior's Hide and the Skull of Corruption are the best pieces of gear I have. The best sword I have is a katana called Bowler's Oathblade, and I'll be carrying it around from now on. I stored my stuff in the Haven Ring and went to the meeting held on the 4th floor. In the meeting room, Joel, Alina, Wolfer, Jorna, Jord, Jonrad, Hilda, Brenda, Nefertiti, Nerina, Mjal, Trudvar, and Angium were all present. Okay, everyone, sit down. As everyone sat down, Jorna approached Wolfer and whispered something for him. He looked at me with eyes wide open, then looked at Alina and Joel. I grinned at him, confirming what he heard. What is the big deal about it, I wonder? You are not the only one to gift your girlfriend a mithril artifact, so don't think that you are the only one who had some romantic night. The two of us weren't the only one who had a pink night too. Some people were glowing this day more than yesterday, so take a hint, damn it. Anyway, what is the big deal, boy? Nerina asked. I looked at Trudvar, and he nodded to me. With that, he stood up and started the report. It was about the Thalmor spy and what we extracted from him, the location of the other Thalmor spies, their contacts, their purpose, some other strategic information, and some plans regarding how to deal with them. So, you want to send the Thalmor away? Killing them off is better than leaving them around. This will send a message that we are not playing nice with them. If we let them be, they will become bolder and infest the area with their spies. The discussion kept going in favor of my opinion. Good, count me in. Jonrad agreed with me and put his golden katana on the table. So you are not giving any face to the Thalmor? Angium asked. Fuck the Thalmor, I said. Hee. I am in too. Angium put his axe on the table. What about the Empire? Their spies are still around. Acting so rashly will make them hold one against you. Jord asked. Fuck the Empire, I said. Haha, why am I loving this? Jord put his spear on the table. So you don't think that moving this early would make them lump you with Ulfric? Brenda asked. Fuck Ulfric, I said. Cousin, you have my axe, Brenda said, and put her axe on the table too. Everyone stood up with their weapons drawn with a bloodthirsty air around us. We moved that night leading a small force of 200 Dare Dragon mercenaries, and our target was the coast near Iskramor's tomb. The ones who didn't follow were Nerina because she was the one to watch over Winterhold when I am not around, and Hilda because she didn't feel well this morning. Other than that, we traveled into two groups, the main group under the lead of Jord and Wolfer, and the stealthy unit under Jonrad and I. So, you made a pact with a saber cat? I talked with Jonrad, who was carrying a large snow saber cat that looked really fearsome. His name is Hans, a really friendly one, Jonrad said while patting Hans. What about Gulliver? I asked about Jonrad's cat. Lazing around at home. Cats aside, when did you acquire such a nice blade? Jonrad pointed to the katana I was carrying. Belonged to one of you blades. Its owner left it over a shrine of Talos and an oath on it. Last I know, he died to the Thalmor chasing him. Jonrad looked sad for a while, then talked again. Do you know which brother that oathblade belonged to? I think his name was Acilius Bowler. I see. So that's Bowler's oathblade. It is, you know the man? Machem, met him once or twice in Cloud Ruler Temple. Didn't know much about him, but he was another good brother that we lost. I see. Do you want the blade? No. You keep it. A blade's katana with you is better than to be with some random adventurer. Bowler wouldn't be any happier seeing his blade being carried in a campaign to kill his enemies. It will bring him comfort. Jonrad's voice was a bit nostalgic. So, you didn't tell me. If the blades were to be reformed again one day, would you go and join them? I asked a question that was on my mind for a while. Jonrad paused for a bit, then shook his head. If the blades were ever formed again, I doubt it would be for the same true purpose it was originally formed for. You mean slaying dragons and guiding a Dragonborn? Jonrad nodded. You can say so. What if that true purpose came up once again? Hee, that's a good question, boy. Well, I am an old man now. If a dragon break ever happened, it would be every man's duty to stand up and fend off against dragons. If a Dragonborn appeared, then every man's duty and honor is to aid him or her towards their path. It is not really a blade's thing to fight dragons and aid the Dragonborn. But if the organization was formed once again with that purpose present, I don't think I have what it takes to go back. I am a father and husband now, you know. I see. His answer is logical and good. Good answer, old man. I didn't really want him to get along with the blades when they come back to the world again. It wouldn't make me feel comfortable. Jonrad was looking at me and trying to figure out the reason for my question. I had to divert the topic. This golden katana you carry around, what is its origin? Oh, good eyes, you were curious about it? Well, it looks cool. Sure it does. Have you ever heard of Goldbrand? With these words, my head went completely blank when I confirmed what I heard. I looked at Jonrad again. Fuck, did you just say Goldbrand? What is Goldbrand? Goldbrand is an ancient artifact which takes the form of a golden katana. It was created by the dragons of the north. According to the legends of thieves, it was given to a great knight who was sworn to protect the dragons. It contains the power of the Daedric Prince Bothia and burns those that it strikes. One more legend about that sword was that it was wielded in the Battle of the Red Ring by Emperor Titus Mede II. All in all, it is a top-quality Daedric artifact. Calm down. This is not Goldbrand. Oh, you startled me, old man. Don't do that again. I have a weak heart. Then what is that? This is a replica of Goldbrand that a friend gifted me. A replica? Well, not as good as the original, but it doesn't lose to your medium or low-quality Daedric artifact. Damn, I want a replica too. Well, the current owner of the real Goldbrand is my friend Glemmet. Remember him? Glemmet? The one we met in Dawnstar with you and Tyr? That was even before I become the Thane of Winterhold. It was when Jonrad called himself Old John and taught me the battle spirit or the aura. That's him. Damn. Just who is that man? Chapter 207. Against the Thalmor, 2. Every 5,000 votes, there will be an extra chapter. Night fell at the coastline of Winterhold. The chilly breeze of the Sea of Ghosts made it impossible for people to survive the damnable cold weather without the company of fire and the cover of furs. Most people, not all people though. Nords can chug on a bottle of mead and walk around with one layer of clothing as if it is the mid of sun's height, July. That night, a band of high elves camped near the coastline under the cover of rocks and made a camp to warm themselves. Among them at the most central area was a high elven officer named Arena. She was the leading officer of this camp, and with orders to gather information about the new Nordic force rising in Winterhold. Arena always had a bad feeling about this quest. The higher-ups sent a very mediocre force under her lead to investigate the new threat in the east with no real backup whatsoever. She only had her partner Eleanor, who had infiltrated into Winterhold 3 nights ago. The mission went like this. Each one of them would go into Winterhold for a week and act as one of the refugees coming from Winterhold. With her talent, Arena performed very well in the first week and gathered a lot of valuable information about the Thane of Winterhold and his group. There was an imperial contact waiting for her in Winterhold and provided her with all the information that happened in the meeting between Winterhold's top brass, the Empire's envoy, and the Stormcloak faction. The information she got her hands are really valuable and enough guarantee her enough merits for a promotion in the ranks. The problem was her partner Eleanor. He was his arrogant mayor and the source of her headache. He would always go and brag endlessly about himself in every occasion. Irina always wondered why would their direct superior, Justiciar Linway, would always tag them up together in a team. She is twice as talented and hard-working than this Eleanor. Still, orders are orders. In order to root out any real threat in Skyrim, Irina had to swallow the bitter pill and do her job. Speaking of, her report was still halfway through done, and she was a bit worried about some certain events. An Altmarine master alchemist appeared in Winterhold. That mayor was known for his radical beliefs about the man-mare relationship as he lived in one of the most damnable cities of men, Windhelm. The city that witnessed a lot of abuse against mayor in its past and present, and also this mayor has taken an apprentice from the men, which meant he was passing knowledge that should have put into the benefit of his race. Such an individual is an assassination target to the Thalmor, but him being in Windhelm kept him away from harm as Eastern Skyrim was not that welcoming to High Elves. It was easy to send some assassins, but it was not worth it till now. With the rising force in Winterhold that is seen as a threat, something had to be done, but any stupid action right now would alert those people. Agent Irina discovered some people who were very alert to her movement and spotted her more than one time. If not for the imperial contact she had, it would have been impossible to move easily. Another piece of news in her report was the individual power of the Thane of Winterhold as well as his close circle. No one had any solid information, but the man was treated like a hero in the eyes of the people. It was said that he could turn the tide of any battle, and like his surname, he was very daring in his actions, qualities that would prove that he is going to be a true headache if left alone. Other than that, the force of Winterhold was diverse and highly trained. There was always a training going on in the mercenary camp of the Dare Dragon mercenaries, and their ships were always moving in the sea. Rumors were that the ships were always engaging with pirates for the sake of training. This meant that the troops of Winterhold have tested their mettle in battle and tasted blood a few times. This is enough to give them the needed experience for any bloody conflict yet to come. The problem here was that the Thane of Winterhold was very cautious in politics despite him being a Nord. He refused to take part in the religious conflict between Eastern Skyrim and the Empire and came up with the old pantheon as an excuse. The Temple of Kine was a dangerous entity that the Thalmor didn't see coming. All the gods of the humans are equally dangerous. Worshipping Kine is also the same as worshipping the demon Doomdrum, Lorcan, whom the Nords call Shor. Whether it is Talos or Shor, worshipping these gods needs to be stopped as soon as possible for the sake of fulfilling the ultimate goal of the Thalmor. Agent Irina ended her report with these warnings to her superiors and requested a swift eradication for the new force in Winterhold. As soon as she ended the report and sealed it, she went out of her tent while cursing the damnable cold of this freezing wasteland. She looked to the east and begged her partner Eleanor to be here as soon as possible. She actually left nothing for him to investigate as she was hoping to hoard all the credit for herself. What worried her actually was that Eleanor would go desperate and try something reckless like going into one of the red zones. These zones are places that got marked as dangerous to infiltrate because of the heavy security on them, such as the new alchemy shop and the Dare Dragon headquarters and barracks. Irina tried to infiltrate one of those places, but she found that there was a presence that was about to obliterate her if she stepped further into the place. This is how sensitive to magic High Elves are, even though she still didn't awaken her highborn power. The awakened power would allow High Elves to have more magicka and a very high-speed magicka regeneration. All Thalmor executioners are awakened individuals with a power that are considered something with a tactical and strategic value. Actually, an officer like her was under one of those extraordinary elves. His name was Justiciar Linway, and he was nearby with some of his trusted officers as he refused to stay in this camp for some reason. Irina sat beside a fire and waited for the return of Eleanor to get this mission over with. She was surrounded by some soldiers from the Dominion that weren't really anything impressive at all compared to the Thalmor soldiers. One must note that the Thalmor are the ruling faction of the Aldmeri Dominion, so any Dominion soldier was much lower in rank compared to an elite Thalmor soldier. Hours passed and Arena's head started to feel heavy. She checked her surroundings one last time and made sure that all the soldiers were sober before going to her tent. At that moment, she heard the sound of something tearing through the air. She looked behind her and conjured a shield to get ready to whatever that was. To her shock, tens of arrows mowed down on their small camp and started reaping the lives of the soldiers around her. Battle stations. She shouted at the top of her voice, and the camp became lively in a second. Elite soldiers or not, high elves are not the foe to be made light of. Their reaction was fast and accurate. Every one of them was at least a seasoned soldier with 70 years of experience under their belt. Compared to Nords, who would be middle-aged people at that time, high elves are not to be looked down upon, well, in most cases. The sound of arrows breaking through the air was heard once again, faster than expected, and another spray of projectiles started killing the soldiers around Arena. What are these? Bolts? Crossbows? That fast? Damn it, take cover. Take a hard cover. Shields and armors were no longer an option. The enemy was using fast crossbows that were unheard of. The power was much higher than the usual and the firing rate was scary. Arena realized that they are under the attack of a new weapon. In truth, these were the lever-action crossbows. John kept their existence a low-profile matter as he didn't even hide them. He just gave some of the guards normal bows and other crossbows to make it look like not a big deal. In truth, these crossbows were a very scary weapon that only the trusted teams would carry around. Wulfur marked his enemies and devised a formation with the help of Njord, Brenda, and Bjorna. Advance. With his order, the Dare Dragon troops started to advance in the snow under the cover of the shooters. With shields above their heads and a few shooters in the ranks, the troops used a mix of urban assault techniques and normal ones. With some mages in the ranks, they could corner the high elves and break into their camp. This was the battle of the big forces. However, in the shadows, many eyes were watching how this situation was unfolding to be. John hid himself and started giving orders and sending individuals for the true fight that is yet to come. Chapter 208, Against the Thalmor, 3. This my birthday, 22nd of January. I am freaking 24. Also, I am publishing extras for 5,000 votes. We can do it. Wulfur gave the orders to attack, and the forces moved in an orderly fashion. A team started shooting to the heart of the Thalmor camp. A team started moving in the open with their shields up, and a small unit of mages was preparing to hammer down the defenses. The Dare Dragon mercenaries were very diverse. John encouraged the idea of learning magic and made many promotions are based on many requirements. Magic was one of them. In his small army, each soldier can at least cast a spell or two, which was rather very impressive. The forces were the infantries, which were the armed forces carrying round Nordic shields and spears, and armed with arming swords which were similar to the Roman legion except in a Viking theme. The archers were mostly relying on the fast lever-action crossbows, and John trained them like the Ottoman janissaries, arming them with a lot of bolts and deadly one-handed melee weapons. While not liking the idea of gunpowder Ottoman cannons to support his janissaries, John's third official team was the living cannons, which are the cannon mages. Unlike other forces that used the mages as a high-grade unit, John's mages were elites who were solely trained on the AoE, area of effect, spells like Fireball. With these units, John created his balanced small army that relied on modern tactics. There were still the naval units, but John preferred the battleships, which were a perfect solution for all naval battles. Ongium, Njal, and Trudvar were Wulfur's commanding officers that oversaw the assault with the ranged teams. Njord, Brenda, and Bjorna Firemane were getting ready for joining the assault. "Commander, are you coming too?" Brenda asked Wulfur, who was carrying his oversized hammer. "Hell yes, Wulfur loves having fun." Wulfur smiled with a hint of bloodlust and walked forward in the lead. Brenda and Bjorna looked at each other and couldn't help but sigh. All the men in their lives are warmongers, even the one who is not firemans or moonblades. Forward, men. Break their skulls and mash their bones. Whose sword is not bloody enough will get a good beating. Wulfur rallied the men who were used to his attitude. In the Thalmor camp, Agent Ornea heard the rallying and gathered her soldiers. They are coming from the north. Ready the traps. Archers take the towers. Soldiers, spears and shields, spears and shields. The inner layout of the Thalmor camp was simple. They constructed a small camp enough to house the 300 soldiers they are here with. Part of their plan was to clash with the force in Winterhold, but it seemed, and their number guaranteed total superiority in their opinion, but still, they were playing in the enemy's playground. Wulfr didn't like to wait for the enemies to prepare. Once he reached the nearest spot on the enemy's fortification, he ordered the smoke grenades to be thrown. These little toys were John's idea, rather than the ability to blind the enemy and make a smoke screen. Some of them can be colored and used to mark areas to receive the bombardment of mages. In this night, the moons didn't give enough light, so it was hard to see further than 10 meters ahead, but these weird grenades could make a glowing gas that could be seen in the darkness. Once the mage unit saw this signal, they understood that this is where they should blindly target. A barrage of fireballs mowed down on the defenses of the Thalmor camp, followed by loud explosions. Each fireball was fired from a staff provided by the company, so their power was guaranteed. In mere seconds, the wooden wall was completely obliterated. Attack! The defense of the Thalmor camp was in a disarray. Wulfr led the charge with his mighty hammer, followed by the 3 firemen's and the dare dragon infantries. Breaking through the fortifications, Jord sped past Wulfr to be the first who would face the Thalmor force. Aurenia was holding her staff high, waiting for the best moment to destroy as many invaders as possible while neglecting on Jord, the lone Nordic berserker who wielded a spear and charged in alone. However, when Jord reached the defense line of the Thalmor, he spoke only 2 words. Fuss. Aro. Power was unleashed with his voice, and the elves in front of him were reduced on the ground after they flew away. Even though the Threesome he used was completely inferior compared to what John can display, it was still Threesome, and Jord was still a talented tongue, even though this was all that he could display in this shout. The damage was done, and Jord took down a lot of elves alone. Aurenia got shocked, but she became infuriated after she realized what just happened. She tried to move the staff and aim her spell at Jord, but an arrow sought her arm, putting her down and dropping her staff on the ground. Fuck. The second line. Retreat to the second line. There was still enough time to reorganize. Aurenia was injured, but she wasn't foolish enough to fight under such a state of shock. She knew that voice masters can't use their voice twice in a row, so there was no more of that dreadful shouting anytime soon. As soon as her troops retreated, Wulfr was already there with his men. Don't give them the chance. Send them to oblivion. Glory to Winterhold. Sovngarde, you sons of bitches. Wulfr waved his hammer and sent 3 elves flying with their limbs broken to fine powder. Each time he waved his oversized heavy hammer, elves would meet their worst nightmares. I am loving it, huh? Wulfr loves big hammers. He was totally in a berserk mode, and he let out a golden aura. Even though he was a heavy warrior, Wulfr loved the holy aura that could heal him and make him fight more. He developed that aura after taking a special lesson from Hilda. His goal was to find a way to shield himself from the fire of the forge, but he ended up making a paladin-like aura. A blue aura rose from beside him, and another hammer landed on an elf, sending him away. Focus, damn it. Stop lusting over your hammer. Jorna was already tired of his attitude with weapons. I can't. This hammer is the best thing John designed so far. Wulfr is very happy. Wulfr didn't stop admiring the hammer, and he waved it again and again at the elves. His image started to transform from the image of a paladin to a mad, blooded berserker. The firemen's troops were gaining ground faster and faster with the lead of the strong heroes, buffing their morale. Jord looked at the far distance and nodded. Looks like the others are moving too. Try to finish her as fast as possible. Acknowledged. The 3 commanding officers of the Dare Dragon followed his orders and increased moved the archers team to the fight too. At a time, Wulfr actually became tired from waving the heavy hammer. Even though he had tons of fun for real this time, he still couldn't find the perfect weapon that would suit him for good. He was somewhat depressed, but still had a fight ahead of him to finish. Here, keep this for me. Wulfr dropped the hammer on a dying elf and took a sword from the ground. He joined the fight again and started his killing spree while testing a weapon after a weapon. In the end, most of the Thalmor died like flies and broke into small teams as they retreated to the tents. Wulfr advanced forward alone and faced a Thalmor officer in one-on-one battle. The officer was using magic, but Wulfr would always throw a hidden knife at him, which resulted to a pure melee in the end. Nonetheless, the elf was a crafty fighter. Wulfr had a sword and blocked the coming attack from the elf's sword with it, countered with a kick to the guts. The elf didn't stop and stabbed at Wulfr's face despite being on a knee. Wulfr avoided and counter-attacked his sword's pommel, sending the elf on his back. Agile as he seemed, the elf rolled backward as Wulfr was charging at him and slashed recklessly upward in a desperate attempt to send Wulfr away, which Wulfr blocked with the sword in his hand. Unfortunately, Wulfr's sword was not anything special and couldn't handle the elven sword in the Thalmor officer's hand. Tisk! Wulfr clicked his tongue and threw the broken sword away. The elf took the chance and slashed at Wulfr, who seemed to be completely not interested. Wulfr only waved his hand and slapped the elf away. How boring. He looked around to find any weapon, and all he saw was an eating fork on a broken table. Wulfr picked it up and walked to the elf with no expressions. Human, don't look down on me. Never. The elf couldn't take the humiliation of being slapped and walked over, but Wulfr already stabbed at him with the fork. The elf got a fork to his throat and died in a state of disbelief to a human. Impossible. Officer Thalmor died just like that? For Dominion officers were hiding away far from Wulfr after seeing him kill an officer like that. Wulfr turned around and saw them and walked towards the tent they hid in slowly. Just as he reached it, he walked through its entrance, and all could be seen from outside was his shadow moving around violently in the inn. A few seconds later, he walked out with the bloody fork in his hand. Who saw him first was Bjorna. Wolf, we are all done. Maybe I should ask John to design me a trident next time. Bjorna heard that, and her eyes rolled upward, then walked away while cursing at John. Chief, we have a prisoner. The leading officer of the camp, a she-elf. Trudvar reported to Wulfr. Fine, tie her up well. John will be pleased. Wulfr said with an absent mind and started overseeing the cleanup. A few minutes ago, when Wulfr started attacking the camp, a few figures in heavy furs watched the situation on higher ground. Justiciar Linway and his troops nodded to one another and started taking action. The Nords really came? Huh? I didn't believe they would be this daring. A Thalmor officer spoke with respect to a tall elf in Thalmor robes. Hehe, they are predictable. As soon as they discovered that idiot Eleanor, they came like hungry feral dogs. Justiciar Linway replied with a smug smile on his face. But for Eleanor to be caught this fast, I can't help but be disappointed. Both Eleanor and Aurenia are fools. Beside their mediocre talent, they couldn't even come up with a way to play these idiotic humans around. The officer around Justiciar Linway started to mock their colleagues that were used as bait. It was true. Justiciar Linway has sent some law-ranked officers with some Dominion soldiers to be a bait for the Nords. Aurenia was a good officer, but she was a perfectionist and had a very competitive soul which always annoyed Linway, while Eleanor was a fool alongside the other nobodies. They were the best to use against the Nords in Winterhold, who seemed to be not going out openly against the White Gold Concordat and planned to hinder the Thalmor in the shadows, according to the spies. The best way was to catch them red-handed and to ambush them while they are attacking the Thalmor camp. As long as the Thalmor could take some Nord prisoners back, they could use them to prove that the faction in Winterhold is a danger to the peace between the Aldmeri Dominion and the Empire, then use the Empire to fight them. After all, humans killing humans and the elves watching from the side is the new play the Thalmor came with. Humans are already foolish enough and had the numbers that the elves can no longer fight against. Let them chip each other lives away while the elves recover. It was one of the problems the Thalmor always had in mind. Even though the elves have long lives and can use these lives to perfect their combat or magic, their birth rate was very much lesser than that of the humans. John was also aware to the fact that the long-living cells would focus more on survival rather than reproduction, which meant that the losses that the elves suffered in the Great War 23 years ago were still having their effect on the elven society, while the humans had already another generation of soldiers to replenish their armies. This is why the Thalmor are rather hesitant to start another great war, as they can guarantee the quality but not the quantity, and they will always try to control the humans to make them fight one another in order to recover in peace on their own. Justiciar Linway used his soldiers as a bait without thinking, as he believed that elves are much better than humans anyway. Even if the humans ambushed, the elves can react and turn the tide. One of the reasons why he took his best officers and retreated on a higher grounds to watch the elves obliterate the humans and brag about it. Still, he couldn't be more wrong. The elves were falling like flies. He kept his face solemn in front of his experienced officers, but he was about to slap himself 1,000,000 times now. Fine. Playtime is over. Let's move and end this shameful display. Justiciar Linway ordered his officer and moved swiftly to save what is left from the elves in the camp. Each elf in the Dominion army, lowlife or not, were important no matter what the others think of. This was the unwritten iron rule after the Great War, as more elven resources can't be wasted anymore. Once Justiciar Linway and his officers reached the location for firing their spells on the Nords, they all started to raise their staves and aim at the Nord team down there. Suddenly, one of the officers fell from his place on the ground. What is happening? Timon, answer me. An officer ran to his fallen friend and started shaking him. Once he turned him around, they found that the mayor was opening his eyes with no breath or reaction. Time stopped for a second and everyone fell silent. The only thing that reminded the Thalmor team with themselves was a strange sound that they didn't expect hearing in a frozen wasteland. Meow. All turned around with their weapons drawn to the source of the sound. A black cat with glowing blue eyes sat on her buttock and tilted its head innocently. She turned her face down and started licking her front paw. Under the paw she lifted up, a small puddle of blood could be seen. The cat raised her face up and glared with its eyes to the elves who forgot to breathe. With that glare, she faded into darkness as if she sank in her own shadow. Chapter 209, Against the Thalmor, 4, Horror of the Skull. Vote 5,000 stones for an extra. We are close. The cat raised her face up and glared with its eyes to the elves who forgot to breathe. With that glare, she faded into darkness as if she sank in her own shadow. Silence took over the place despite the noise coming from the small battle between the Thalmor and the Dare Dragon Company. The elven officers tried to look around for the small cat-like beast that killed one of their comrades. Don't wander around. Form a defensive formation. The enemy has spotted us, and they are using demonic arts. Justiciar Linway couldn't help but shout at his officers. He needed them to be in full awareness, not to fall in panic. Damn it! How is that possible? Justiciar Linway inwardly wasn't believing that he got ambushed like that. These men must be using some cowardly tactic of some sort. He kept scanning the area around with his magic and found some traces. To the east, 100 meters, fire. With these short words, Justiciar Linway gave rapid orders, and his officers followed immediately. A few lightning spells dashed from their staves and landed exactly where Linway pinpointed, but no confirmation on a hit was received. Damn it! Justiciar Linway now sensed a real movement, and it was opposite to where he thought it would be. A second later, the attackers showed themselves. Roar! With a mighty beast roar, a large snow saber cat emerged out from the snow and jumped at one of the large-bodied officers. In a mere second, the saber cat swooped another 2 officers and mowed down the large officer with its fangs. Trying to put on some resistance, the officer activated a close-ranged magic on the saber cat, but out of nowhere, a golden sword cut his hands off in a clean arc. The wielder of the blade was riding on the saber cat. Once he killed the large elf like nothing, he directed his attention to Justiciar Linway right away. Justiciar Linway coped on with the situation immediately and directed his staff at Jonrad, trying to cast a spell as soon as possible. Humph! Jonrad snorted in disdain and waved his sword once again towards Justiciar Linway. A whip of flame was released towards Linwei at the same time he cast a lightning spell. The two magics collided, resulting Jonrad's triumph. Linwei's staff flew away by the shock of the clash, and he was sent a couple of meters to the back. Using that force, Linwei managed to rotate himself in the air, then grabbed a scroll from his robe. Once he faced Jonrad again, he opened the scroll and a large-scale frost magic in it was released at Jonrad. PSK. Cheaters. Jonrad clicked his tongue and inhaled as much air as he could. However, what he exhaled was a fiery breath resembled that of dragons. What the King of Ash? Linwei recognized the skill right away. This was something only written about in tales, but this is with no doubt the fire breath skill, something only dragons and dragon knights can use. The only known dragon knight in these parts is an old nemesis of the Thalmor and a former blade agent, the King of Ash, Jonrad Firemane. Linwei's spell was broken and he retreated even more. Once he could get a breather and face Jonrad once again, he noticed that one of his officers was sneaking behind Jonrad. Linwei decided to make an opening for that officer and started spamming fast spells at Jonrad. Jonrad didn't hesitate and started dueling Linwei with his flame magic. The officer that was sneaking behind Jonrad caught the chance and jumped at Jonrad, aiming his dagger at Jonrad's neck. Die, filthy human. Jonrad didn't even react. In a split of a second, a silver bolt came out of nowhere and hit the Thalmor officer in his forehead, sending him away like a ragdoll. The officer's body landed on a nearby rock with the bolt in his head, pinning him on it. "Thanks, daughter," Jonrad said in a lazy tone. "You welcome, father." A few tens of meters away, Jellinar was aiming her crossbow at the dead elf and nodded to herself with a grin. "Let's not laze around. Kill them all." Jon appeared beside Jul with his hand on the katana sword, Bowler's Oathblade. With his order, Jul and Alina nodded. Behind them, a few figures emerged and followed Jon's lead. These were Team Zero, Jon's personal guards. The group was around 20 people who all charged out of the snow. As they were running, a small black figure joined them from the side. During the charge, Nefertiti started to enlarge, turning into her beast form. "Let's go, partner." Jul ran and jumped on Nefertiti's back. Nefertiti was not as large as Jonrad's saber cat, but carrying someone as light as Jul was a piece of cake. Jul switched to her small spear and aimed it forward, then threw it at the nearest Thalmor officer. The spear hit splendidly and Jul jumped from Nefertiti, performing a flying kick at the Thalmor officer, then retrieved her spear. Just as she landed, she aimed the spear and threw it again. It wasn't over yet. She switched to a short sword and a buckler, then joined the fight. The crown of the Valkyrie on her head shone in a silver gleam, and her skin started changing color from ashen gray to shining silver. Jul dived into the enemies, cutting through them left and right. Her attacks were empowered by her aura and the crown on her head. "I am not falling behind." Alina used her wind magic and stormed the other side of the Thalmor officers. She unleashed a large cyclone of wind that threw the elves to the air. She entered to the eye of the cyclone and unsheathed her two moon sabers. In an artistic style, she drew arcs of blood with her swords. Once she had enough slashing, she touched the Fire Keeper mask on her eyes with a finger, and red veins started to form on its design. Pitiful screams and wails of help sounded from inside Alina's cyclone, but they died down in no time. Once her cyclone went out of magicka, around 10 elves could be seen in puddles of their blood that came out of their eyes, noses, ears, and skin. Some even killed themselves to rid themselves of the pain they suffered. On another side, Nefertiti was advancing through the Thalmor with agile steps. She could use two styles of shadow magic now. The first is to travel through shadows by sinking into any shadow and moving from a shadow to another, including hers and Jon's. The second is to form claws, fangs, and scales, all made of shadows on her body. Nefertiti formed two large fangs, extended her claws, and made some sharp scales on her back and tail. One wave of her limbs could break armors and dent weapons, but Nefertiti preferred keeping things simple and targeted the gaps of the armors. With the speed and agility she had, she jumped like a demon between the officers, killing them one by one. Jon and his team arrived last. He had no wind magic to fly with or could ride on the fast Nefertiti. Damn it. Leave some for me. John pushed out his green aura of madness and taunted all the remaining officers. They charged at him with mad expressions. Die, human. Filthy Nord, we will eradicate your race. John smiled and put his hand on Bowler's oath blade. This blade had an oath on it to kill the Thalmor, and this was the perfect moment to avenge and honor its previous owner. John drew the katana the right way and wielded it with 2 hands. Once the first officer came close enough, John slashed horizontally. Slash. A body and a head got separated and fell on the ground. Slash. 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 Each time John slashed, another body and head would go in separate ways. Just like that, John mindlessly killed over 15 Thalmor officers on his own. Man, katanas are really stupid. What kind of a sword can only slash and not stab? John seemed to be dissatisfied with katanas. Unlike how the media in his past life made the katanas appear like the sexiest weapons ever, John hated the shit out of that weapon. Even Wolfer himself described them as defect products. Want to switch with one of my sabers? Alina came behind John and offered him a weapon. No thanks. Even though I am a longsword kind of guy, I will go with magic for now. John put Bowler's oathblade back into his haven ring and took out the Skull of Corruption, the infamous staff of the Daedric Lord Vermina. Alina saw that staff and got some cold shivers in her spine. The staff looked like as if it was made of short, straight bones attached up together, the joints with bone spurs coming out from them. The top of the staff had a horned skull with demonic features that made it look like the most horrifying thing ever. https://ibb.co/dbdk 37N. Here is a pic. Once John wielded the Skull of Corruption, its eyes glowed with a green light and made it look scarier than it already is. Retreat. With John's order, Team Zero, along with Nefertiti, Alina, Jonrad, and Jelinar, all retreated behind John. The Thalmor thought they were gaining an advantage, but what met them was John aiming his staff at them. Now, let's see what this skull can do. The skull had a few strange abilities that its wielder can use rather than using the staff to cast stronger spells. These abilities were Dream Steal, Walking Nightmares, and Psychic Agony. To use the latter 2 powers, the user needed to use the first one to charge the skull by stealing the dreams of the sleeping people and replacing them with nightmares. John had the best source of dreams, which was Winterhold's prison. He went out every night and collected the dreams of the guilty to torment them without feeling bad about it. One of the reasons why John hunted many bandits lately. Now, with the staff charged, John can use the other 2 abilities. John waved the staff at the Thalmor agents and cast Walking Nightmares. What appeared was something unspeakable, as if the Thalmor agents were cloned. Another band of identical Thalmor agents appeared on the side of John. Even Jonrad and those who were around John retreated in a panic, not understanding what happened just now. The Thalmor themselves were in a state of utter shock, seeing mirror images of themselves on the side of the enemy. Attack! With John's command, the clones on his side attacked their originals in the most confusing scene ever. Each clone picked its own original and targeted it solely with equal power and equal skill. John's lips curved up. This staff cost me a lot of nights to charge, and its power isn't half bad, much better than the game. Take note that I mixed the power of the staff from the lore with the effects from the game. Check the UESP wiki. The fight kept going and going. John was fully focused on how is it going. If a clone killed its original, he would immediately send it away. If an original killed a clone, then he would send a lightning strike spell from the staff to take down that weakened original. Finally, the clones killed all the enemies in front of John. Not entirely all of them, as the last mare standing was the injured Justiciar Linway, who barely defeated his clone. Amazing, right? For this single artifact to create such a fascinating power. John walked towards Justiciar Linway with a wide grin. Damn you. Justiciar Linway cursed at John while kneeling on the ground in pain. Don't get me wrong, you are a good mage. I would have enjoyed fighting you, but let's just say that all is fair in love and war. John aimed the skull at Justiciar Linway and used its last power, Psychic Agony. Yeah. Justiciar Linwei fell on his back and started squirming on the ground while screaming more loudly than he ever screamed in his life. The pain was so all-consuming that he no longer cared about his so-called elven superiority and would actually beg John to stop if he could. It was as if 1,000 hot knives cut through his flesh and skin. Alina walked beside John and looked at Linwei's state. It was the same thing she could cause with her eyes, a state of intense psychological torture to the point that its effect would appear on the physical body. While channeling the spell to his heart's content, John noticed that the power of the staff started fading. It seems that the staff had run out on dreams. Now the skull can only act as a powerful magical staff until it gets charged with dreams once again. Justiciar Linwei woke up from his pain in a haggard state. His appearance was so miserable as he almost sank in his sweat and filth. John, looking down on him, caused him an unspeakable horror, as if he saw a monster from the deepest of oblivion. In pitiful screams and horrified shrieks, Justiciar Linwei started crawling on the snow, trying to get away from John. He would go insane if he ever met John once again. He can't take it anymore. His mind was clouded with all sorts of fear, and survival was his sole purpose. In all his days, he never was this scared. John looked at him, mocking the pitiful appearance of the elf. He flicked his fingers, spoke. Bring him alive. Shackle his magicka and gag his mouth. In synced steps, the members of Team Zero moved like shadows towards Justiciar Linwei, dragging him back and beating him left and right. John turned around and stored the skull of corruption in his haven ring. Chapter 210, To a New Adventure. Cleaning the battlefield was done mostly by Alina. She summoned a strong storm that buried everything under a mound of snow. The Thalmor camp was looted and every trace of their existence was erased. All right, good job, everyone. Trudvar will oversee the rewards based on the merits of today. Also, those who are injured are going to receive an extra raise based on the injury. Yeah. Sovngarde. Boss. 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 The men started cheering on their own once again. Thanks. I am happy that you are happy, but remember, today never happened. If anyone asks, then you know what to say. Bandits. That's right, which is not far from the truth anyway. If any tiny piece of rumor went out, I will figure out who said it. Capiche? Capiche. Good men. My relationship with the troops of Winterhold was very good. I trained them many times and kept them close most of the time. These troops are my important brothers and sisters after all. I had to keep them under the impression that their boss is an approachable person who treats them fairly all the time. I can tell many of their names, with the help of the system of course, and offered them a lot of free education and magic. I also helped them with their family and health matters and offered them the best of Winterhold services. Even though that was the case, I also added limitations to what the mercenaries can do and have to limit their greed. It was a very well-studied system to keep everyone in line. After finishing with the general tasks, I went to the tent in the camp that is now ours. There were my top officers gathered alongside the 2 prisoners we had in our grasp. Apparently, their names are Orinia for the female agent and Linwei for the male agent. How is the loot? Perfect. Better than perfect. We took a lot of elven gear this day to the point that it will sink me with work. Wolfer loves work though. Wolfer said with a pleased face. Okay, bro. I am happy for you. Smelt all of them and make us some good products. Noted. Hey, I was thinking, that's dangerous. Very funny. Can you design me a trident? This guy. What weird idea is he dragging me into this time? John, if you ever design something new for him, you won't hear the end of it. Jorna came out of nowhere and threatened me with a dagger. Okay. Geez. The hell is going on between you guys? I don't want to know, but get a hold of yourself, man. That hammer you made last time is very good. Well, it is too heavy. Just find yourself some good sword and use it as a secondary. I am making a big order in the coming days, so make sure to be free. What? Want a new weapon? Me? Nah. I will go look for a certain sword in a few days. You will tag along. Fine. The meeting in the tent was concluded fast. Cousin Brenda took her men and went back to the Moonblade clan. We from the Dare Dragon Company and the Firemen's rode in front of the troops back to Winterhold. That was one hell of a staff, kid. John Rad was riding beside me on his saber cat. Dreadful, isn't it? Just don't show it to your mother. I called out the skull of corruption from the Haven Ring and showed it to him. Alina doesn't like it, I said. Poor child. Her luck is as bad as your mother. You mean because of us, born under the serpent? John Rad nodded. It is our fate that stinks, old man. These women are kind enough to us that they decided to stay in our lives. You and I both know we struck it the luckiest. I said what I firmly believed in. For Hilda, Alina, and Jelinar to follow men with broken fates like me and John Rad. Those women are the greatest no matter how I think about it. With the number of hardships in our lives, those women just withstood all the stupidity and pushed us forward. I can't help but admire them. John Rad himself went silent to what I said, but I am sure his thoughts were exactly like mine. Wahahaha, kid, I admit it, truer words were never said. It seemed he agreed with me completely for the first time. It was gross, but I think we are both glad we agreed like that. Speaking of mother, is she? Yes, she is. I smiled widely when John Rad confirmed my thoughts. Why aren't you pleased? I thought you would be jumping around all over the place by now. To tell you the truth, a few months ago when you came to the clan, I and your mother were ready to have another flock of children, but now as it happened, you were chickening out? Well, I wouldn't put it that way, but fuck, sigh. We are chickening out. It was obvious. Their firstborn turned out to be a disaster child that almost destroyed a clan and made a lot of trouble throughout Hammerfell, Cyrodiil, and Skyrim. Now that I think of it this way, I am truly a disaster child. Look, it all will turn out just fine. The world can't endure two of me in the same era. Haha, I guess you're right. John Rad and I were really agreeing more and more this day. Okay, what are you still doing here? I asked. What do you mean? What do you mean, what do I mean? Still, not getting you, son. Aren't you the one who has a pregnant wife? You and I both know how crazy can she get when she has one of them weird thoughts. John Rad realized what I meant. Well, I am heading back first. John Rad patted his saber cat and moved ahead as fast as he could. Damn, those saber cats are really fast. I was left back, but I was not alone. I turned around my flame Atronach horse and waited for Alina and Joel to catch up. John, Homan, ladies, what's with father? Joel asked. He remembered something and went ahead first. Alina rode on my right and Joel rode on my left. Nefertiti was lazing on Joel's Atronach horse, and Alina was looking into a note. What is that? This is the initial report from what Angium could make our prisoners spit out. I see. What does it say? You see, Angium used or rather abused your name with the elf male, which turned out to be really useful. The mayor pissed himself and spat out all what he knows. Good. Apparently, the first purpose is to assess the threat of Winterhold's new government, that's us, and to get a list of names and details about the important people inside Winterhold. It seems that the female prisoner has infiltrated Winterhold and gained the names of some senior employees in the company alongside some information about their personalities and weaknesses. Stuff like their relatives outside Winterhold and those with families in places the Thalmor can reach. Haha, I saw that one coming. I said with a wide grin. Seriously, how low can they get? They would go as far as kidnapping the relatives of our people to force them into their side? Jelinar seemed upset about it. Of course, it is how low people are. That is why I made the background form in the employment papers a must. Those who are going to be promoted to high places were mostly people from Winterhold, or those with no origins that we trust. I see. The natives and the Dunmare. That's why you always preferred the Dark Elves and Nords. True, I have a high opinion in Dark Elves as I was raised by one and I also like them. They are really down to earth and humble folk as long as they are not nobles. True. Jelinar buffed her chest. She is a half-dark elf, but her appearance is very much influenced by them, so in public, she can be counted as a dark elf with some human ancestry. Anyway, that's not all. Rather than sorting us out, they were to assassinate any threat that is not connected to any large force and figure out the relationship between the Dare Dragon Company and the clans of Skyrim. Alina kept going. That far? How dirty? Joel said. Heh, it gets better. They are also to try and frame us with anything that would make the Empire move against us. They wanted to frame some of us to be a Talos cultists or related to the Blades, but their plans have failed with the emergence of the Temple of Kine. Their next move seemed to be luring us on a fight, then capture some of us to prove that we are a danger to the White Gold Concordat. Dirty. Joel was still displeased. Not impressive. I said my opinion. How would you have done it then? Alina asked. Well, if I am the enemy of Winterhold, I would attack its economy by trying to influence the naval trades and make it hard for the company to operate outside Winterhold. My next step would be spreading rumors around the citizens about the company to worsen its image. The third move would be spreading an epidemic or any kind of poison around the population, then offer the cure in exchange for the most important resources in Winterhold. This would prevent any economical stand-up in the hold once. Again, that's how I weaken the entity, break it from inside, and destroy its infrastructure, I said with a proud tone. The girls, however, were looking at me with pale faces. I am going to spread the news around my friends from the other clans to never piss you off, Alina said. I think you are the most suitable person to face the Thalmor after all. They wouldn't have a chance against you, Joel said. Well, it is not my fault that I was reincarnated from a shitty world that would trade people lives for oil. Unless you control their greed, mankind is a lost cause in my opinion. Still, do you have any preparations if someone as scary as you appeared on the side of the enemy? Alina asked. Sure. To prevent any of that from happening, I gathered a lot of information about our important trading partners and their weaknesses to find all leverages on them. The second thing I did was to control the news flow in the hold by controlling the rumors and recruiting eyes and ears around the town. The last thing was hiring a lot of healers for the Temple of Kine, and also by luring a master alchemist like Master Nerelian to come to Winterhold. Now there will be no possible way to strike us from inside as long as we keep our security up all the time. The girls started thinking about what I said and nodded in the end. Well, carry on with the report, I said. Ahem, this is how they were planning to deal with us overall. That high-elf female agent is apparently a very diligent one. She showed a lot of resistance during the interrogation and wouldn't speak a word. Also, her work showed that she has a talent that the Thalmor failed to employ in the right place. One less threat to worry about. I agree. The last piece of information, however, is interesting. It seemed that there is something very important that the Thalmor suspect they would find in Japhet's Folly. What is that? No idea. The elf didn't know. All what we could tell that it is something of value to the elves that they lost to pirates 6 years ago, and they want it back. Is that all? Yes. If the elves were after something that much, then it would bring me great pleasure to take it away from their hands. It seems that we should power up the fleet and its firepower as fast as possible. We have 2 months until summer, and the sea is still frozen now, so it is dangerous to sail with a lot of ships. Still, we have to risk it and go to that place. That place? Yes, you should pack your things. We are going to Solstheim. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.